Hey there. This is stream number 75. And thank you for joining me, whether it's on Twitch or on YouTube. So actually I need to double check something, make sure just making sure my stream title's correct. Last time I slipped up and did not remember to update my stream title. So looks good. And at some point Twitch will kick in and say I'm no longer hosting. Oh, there it goes. So yeah, there's a little bit of a startup delay, but I don't want to make people watching my YouTube videos wait too long. So I start talking and maybe I should just spend a few minutes every stream just doing setup stuff and chatting through that, because people aren't really tuning in on Twitch right away anyway. Anyway, so yesterday I didn't quite get stuff done. I had the plan yesterday to have coordinator connect to other realms if not already connected, and then start working on server coherence, but I didn't even get the first thing done. So kind of scaling back today, and I'm saying that I'm going to hopefully get the servers to connect to each other. There's the WebGate make connection method. I did not remember to implement it. I got kind of fooled into thinking it was there because the mock WebGate that I built up for testing the coordinator did pretend to work, but the real thing doesn't work. So I kind of slipped up there. I have to go back and implement that. It needs to have a client configuration and transport because it's being asked to make a connection, so it's a client for one of the other servers. And that's only really just to get it set up. The goal is that communication will be through WebSockets, which are bidirectional. But there is a distinction between client and server, or initiator and responder, on the HTTP protocol while you're setting it up. So I'll be working on that. Hopefully I get through that, and then what did I have here? Right, I'll be testing that out using Realm servers that I run locally just on 2 different command lines manually. If I get through that and I have extra time, I'll start working on server coherence. I keep bringing these links from one planned day to the next, just in case anyone lands on this page and they want to know more about this algorithm. It's not something I invented. It's proven in the industry by now. There are lots of implementations of it, white paper, Wikipedia page, lots of stuff. So not my stuff. I'm just trying to follow the in the footsteps of people who've done this in the past. Boga tea, by the way. That's my first tea of the stream. So I'm also going to try to attempt to not lose my voice at the 3-hour mark by drinking tea or water at regular intervals. So if you've never seen this before and you're just joining in, let me test some of my commands that you can try. So there is this. It goes to the notebook page for more details, but basically I'm working on setting up a new multiplayer online role-playing game at the very early stages, so there's not much there, and there won't be really anything playable at first. But if you do go there, you'll see right away there's a state, and I'll keep this page updated, so if you come back in a month or two and you want to see can you play it or not, this should be updated. If it is, it's playable. So the idea, it being online and multiplayer, is we're setting up servers first, and then we're going to sort of make a minimal client so we can interact with the servers, and then build things up step by step. I want this to be an evolving game. So I want people to get into it pretty soon, at least faithful playtesters. And as I'm getting people to play and log in, I want to be able to go in and continue working on the game without having to tear the game down to add things to it. So you should see me in the game actively adding content, interacting with players maybe. Depends on the volume, I guess. So yeah, we're very early in this plan. So the servers don't even talk to each other yet. That's the objective for today. It's been the objective for several days now. The server architecture, it's going to be a cluster of servers for fault tolerance, availability, all those nice to have keywords. But essentially it means that the game will be duplicated. for example, in this diagram, it's showing 4. I think we'll probably have at least 5 because the algorithm I plan to leverage sort of talks about a good number being 5, but apparently, from what I understand, 3 is the bare minimum. If you have 3, you can survive 1 server being down. If you have 5, you can survive 2 being down. Anyway, each server has identical state. The servers connect to each other and constantly are talking to each other to make sure that their idea of this game state matches those of all the other servers. That's what the consensus means. All the servers reach a consensus or agreement of what the game state is. And then one of these servers will be elected leader. There's an election process through the algorithm. And the leader's job is to make the final call on game state changes. And I'm also designating the leader to be the server that is listening for connections from clients on the so-called well-known port. So it's the port that the clients are hard-coded to try to connect to at first until they learn about the other servers and are told to go talk to other servers. So these servers also do load balancing. If a lot of clients come in, the first leader server will say, hey, client, go to server 2 or 3 or 4 to make sure that all the servers have their own fair share of clients and not one server is overloaded. And in addition to these servers, by the way, these are all going to be C++ with Lua scripting, and the client being in the player's browser, so running JavaScript. There's also another small server way in the back end called the orchestrator, and like the name implies, it just makes sure the show is still running. So it doesn't need to do that much because the consensus algorithm already handles a lot of like electing the leader and keeping the state consistent. The orchestrator does do a few key things. It is set up as a system service. So like in Linux, it would be with systemd. That allows the operating system to ensure that that process, the orchestrator, is always running. So if it isn't running when the computer boots up, it'll run it. And if it ever were to crash, the system will restart it. Assuming it's running, its job is to do the same for these Realm servers. I decided not to try to get these Realm servers to be system services because, for one, there are multiple instances on it. So that makes it a little bit complicated because most OS service definitions, it's assumed that just one process or one instance. And so the orchestrator just launches a Realm server if it isn't running. And if it is running, it'll be talking to them and just kind of pinging them regularly just to check if it might be running but frozen or misbehaving. Then it'll kill that server and relaunch it. Also, if the configuration changes, it'll push new configurations to the cluster. So it's also a way to give a portal for admins to do things like upgrade, change the configuration, update new server code, that kind of thing. So inside this Realm server box, we have these things. So I won't really describe this section here. Can you see my cursor? This bottom section too much because this is the actual game state and we won't get there for a few weeks. But basically the consensus algorithm for server clusters requires there to be a log or a sequence of actions that you're applying to the server state. I call it a journal. So it'll be anything that changes in the game, like a PC, a player's character moves around in the world, or someone picks up an item. Each of these things would be a journal entry or a log entry. And we will have a component reconciler, which is kind of getting a request to make log entries from different sources and kind of collating them together. Coordinator is going to be the one that's sort of represents the rest of the server on the network. So it makes connections, it receives connections, it routes messages. And we were working on that yesterday. It should be done enough for servers to connect to each other and recognize each other. But there's a component that it uses called the web gate that is, hold on a second. And that, folks, is my little overlay that I put up when I need, when I get interrupted or there's a loud noise. So that's what that means. So yeah, this web gate is doing the actual network connections, for the coordinator, and it's right now missing a function. That's the subject of today. We're going to fill in the missing function there. It leverages the work I've done in previous streams, which is implementing a web server. I made one from scratch, except for the cryptography parts, and that stuff should be pretty good, pretty solid. I did find a few bugs recently, but overall it should be okay. We're going to fill in the missing piece of this WebGate so that the coordinators on each of these instances, right now we're only running 2 of them, but the idea is to get this connection established so there's only one connection between the 2, and they stay up. If a server dies and gets restarted, either of the servers will reestablish the connection. And once we have that stable base of a cluster of servers connected all to each other, then we can implement, I don't know why I flipped back to that screen, but we can implement the consensus algorithm to keep the state all in sync. And for that, I won't go into too many of the details now, but you can find it through these links. So let's do some coding. And any questions, feel free to post them in chat. I also have a Discord, and I've set up a bunch of different commands to explain certain things. Like if you wanted to know more about why am I programming on Windows, and what am I doing with VS Code? Okay, I don't have the VS Code. I think it's VSC. There we go. Should probably make an alias for that. So make alias VS Code to VSC. If you see me doing this during the stream, it's because either I get a suggestion from a viewer, or I think of something that I don't want to handle right away, but I need to write it down so I don't remember. I make these plans. There's a page for every stream in advance, at least the plan part, and then as I'm going, I'll put in notes, and then after the stream, I fill in. Retrospective, I don't always fill in, but if there's something that struck me about that particular stream or that day, I might write in thoughts there. Follow-up, I try to come back to at some point to address any notes, so I'll like any updates to the notes. Okay, so before we get into that WebGate missing function, there was one thing. I was running the unit test right before streaming, and I noticed one of the tests is broken. And I remembered running into this yesterday, and so let's fix it really quick. This is a bad test, so the test requirement's wrong. That's in Realm server test source coordinator tests, right? Or was it? Yeah, coordinator test mobilize primary. So let me explain what this is. I use TDD, so test-driven development. With the exception of user interfaces and really highly integrated components like the main program, I try to test one component at a time. And I write tests first. So before there's even a feature or while there's still a bug, I will write a test that documents and, how do I say it? I guess you just say test. It documents and tests that a feature or a feature is there or a bug is fixed. You do that first. So the test will fail, obviously, because you haven't written the feature or you haven't fixed the bug. You get the test as complete as you can. Then you write the code or fix the bug to make the test pass. That's the basic cycle. And there's a link there, or you do the TDD command if you want to get that link, if you want to learn more. So I use the Google test framework, and I have a command for that too. That is made by Google, and it's for C, C++, and you just set it up in your workspace and include its header, and then it gives you these macros for defining a test, and then within a test, defining expectations or assertions. So if you see expect, it means that it's going to check something, and if it's not what's expected, the test will be marked as a failure. And you'll see sometimes assert. I should really assert underscore. Something like that, and that's a strong expectation. That means not only do we expect these to be equal, if they're not equal, stop the test. It's failed and stop. I'll do that if it doesn't make sense to continue the test. For example, here, we're waiting for a future to become ready, as in the asynchronous operation was complete. The asynchronous operation here is, was the connection established? Well, if the connection wasn't established, it makes no sense to go in and try to get the information that would only be stored if the connection was established in the first place. So if we sometimes also do that if we're going to check a pointer for it being null before we try to dereference it, because that would actually crash the test runner, which would not be good. We would get less information out of our tests. Okay. Now that that's explained, let's go to that test that failed. Right, it was mobilized primary. Okay, so this expectation is no longer correct. When we mobilize the coordinator, it used to be that we would expect the instance ports, so the private and public port, to be bound, and also the main port, which is what only the leader should bind. So that's no longer correct because I changed the design so that instead of every server trying to bind the main port, only the leader will try. So doing this, changing the test, is really just changing the requirements. And when I check in to version control, that's what I'm going to say. So I'm going to build that and make sure the test passes now, and we'll check that in and then move on. Run the tests again. They're all passing, so let's check that in. Actually, there are other things that I'm working on in the background here that I don't really want to check in right away. I changed the worker polling period. That was just to reduce spam in messages. Actually, I'm going to remove that for now. So we will not stage that. We will stage this one. And then this is the expectation change. Yeah, so the code actually did the wrong thing before. It actually did try to bind the main port, even though it's not the leader. Oh, I also want... Alright, I updated some documentation. I need to check that in separately. Right, so let's say coordinator. Hey, Euphius, how many cores do I have? 16. But the thing with C-test, I think, is it just runs that many processes. So in reality, if I do like 2000, it'll still accept it. It's just going to use all my cores. And so if I had 18 tests, then it would only run the first 16, and then the moment 2 are done. Actually, I guess it would go round robin approach, and it would slow some of the tests down. And I don't know why I picked 18. I just, for some reason, do. I really should just be J2000, right? One reason you might want to limit it is if you want to make sure you don't slow down some other program like OBS or something. And if I knew I had 16 cores, I might say just 8, right? You can see here the result. It's only starting 2 when 1 finishes. So it starts 8 and waits for 1 to finish, and then there's another slot free. And if I were to chart the CPU usage, it should only use a maximum of 50%, right? Because it's only 8 cores are being used at a time, assuming they're all single-threaded. 16 is like the normal now if you buy not even the top tier CPUs, but I think most Intel i7s now have 16 cores, right? Okay, so this is, I don't know what DE was going to be. It is, oh, I know what it was. Design change about when main port is bound. Change in anticipation of using raft algorithm where only the leader should bind the main port. Well, really, raft doesn't say that. Well, okay, let's just say this. Since that algorithm elects one server to be the leader, it's convenient to assign the binding of the main port to the leader. Hey, Cobalt, how's it going? I am working on getting my game to be more than a thought in my head about what I would like to have. So, but this fair warning that any kind of development, even especially game development, it takes a long time. So, and you're seeing the very first beginnings of it. So it might be kind of boring now. And I don't mind if you come back a month or two from now to wait until there's more here. There's not going to be much to see at first, but if you're the kind of person who kind of wants to see how things begin, this might be interesting for you. Okay, so that's a design change. Oop, I did the wrong button. Design change there. I'm doing okay. So I feel like I'm still learning how to be a good streamer. I'm getting a lot of advice from other streamers, and I'm using a new chat client for Twitch that another streamer's mod made, and I'm just kind of still getting used to interacting with chat. And I'm new at game dev too, so I feel like I'm in for a lot of work, just learning. Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of cheat as far as game engines, so to speak. I decided to move most of the game onto the server side. So typically what a game engine does, it's all client side. So I'm just gonna use frameworks like either Pixie.js or Phaser in JavaScript, and then focus most of my time on where I think I'm more effective, which is the server side. In fact, you know what? If someone wanted to work on client side stuff, I wouldn't mind. Let's see. Yeah. Although I'd like to learn more about game engines and client side stuff. I'll have to do at least a little bit, right? I need some kind of client. Okay, this was a change I made based off of yesterday's notes. So before yesterday, I guess it's kind of hard to show the difference. There used to be two lines connecting it, and I realized, no, we only need to keep one WebSocket between Realm servers because it's bidirectional. So I changed that part of the diagram. So it's like fix system level diagram regarding server connections. We only have one persistent WebSocket between two servers, so it doesn't make sense to draw two lines. All right. This, I just wanted to abandon this change. This, I increased the worker polling period so I didn't see so many didn't spam myself with messages while we were testing something yesterday. All right, so let me build that and make sure everything's still running. Oh, hey there, Canadian Sean. I thought that was from Cobalt because the colors for me are just about the same, and it both begins with a C. So, how's it going, Canadian Sean? Okay, J2000. Just make sure they're all parallel. Cool. And that's running everything, not just what we've been working on. I can focus in on it just by running that. So this is all Google Test Framework, by the way. Google makes it, which is really nice. So we're ready to move on, right? Yeah, so the problem that I ran into, which I was very embarrassed when I ran into it, is I found this. Oops. It doesn't actually ever make a connection. I was fooled into thinking it did because in the unit test of another component, I have this mock WebGate, and guess what? It does do something for make connection. So it makes a fake connection. So we need to actually work on making a real connection in the real WebGate. Do I have a demo video screenshots? So I don't because the game doesn't exist yet. I guess I could make some concept screenshots, but if you go to Code Journey, I have it's sort of a long read, but it talks about where I learned to code, and there's some screenshots in there. There's one for Ultima 4, I think. And if you look at what the game I'm planning to make, I really enjoyed those really old retro games, so I'm kind of an older guy, so I like these older games, and I would be really happy if I could take a game with the same kind of genre or feeling to it as Ultima 4 and make that multiplayer with a lot of stuff thrown in. So what if you can imagine it, what the game will look like It'll be 2D pixel art, and nothing too fancy because it's just me. Unless I were to hire an artist, and it'll just be a pretty simple interaction to begin with. Hey, there are multiple pixels. When I do get a client running, I will try to make a demo video and screenshots. It's still really early, so I apologize for not having anything yet. Okay, so making a connection. So WebGate has its own set of tests, and I had set up make connection just as a placeholder. So let's actually fill that in now. I have to get re-familiar with the framework I had made for WebGate tests. I think it mocks a timekeeper and mocks connections. Okay. And we have a mock transport, but it's the server transport. We're going to need to provide a client transport, I think. If you ever need an artist, I recommend Fiverr. Okay. Let me grab that. I've been trying to get into the habit of doing this. Oh, here we go. Any listener suggestions I like to keep for later. And thank you for all the suggestions. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to rename this guy to be mock server transport. And I know, because I know we're going to need to make one for the client side. The WebGate is going to be both a server and a client from the perspective of the HTTP protocol. It's an HTTP server because it listens on a port, and browsers, say, can connect to it and submit requests, and it has to come up with a response. On the flip side, it's also an HTTP client because it also needs to talk to its brother servers or sister servers. And to do that, to make that contact, it's going to send an HTTP request like a browser would, and ask to be upgraded to a WebSocket. So at least for a little bit, it's also going to be a client. So I'm going to anticipate needing to do that. Actually, I think I'm going to cheat and find another component where I had a mock server transport. So I'm going to search for client. I said server, meant to say client though. Okay, this will do. So mock client side transport. Grab that guy. I'll just pull him straight into WebGate tests here. I'll collapse this. We're going to have a mock client transport. Is it a React browser game? Yeah, basically. You got it. At least for now, I'm really attracted to learning React, probably because the streamers I watch are using it as well. And the server is going to be C++, but also some Lua, because I want to be able to change the game logic without having to recompile stuff. So eventually you'll see me embed the Lua, what do you call it? The entire language is like 3 C files. I'll be putting that into the server. Let me elaborate a little bit here. So when it needs to listen for incoming HTTP requests, or when it needs to make its own outgoing HTTP requests. It's the most popular SPA. Is it? I'm wondering about this. So is there a site that like everyone trusts to give it a ranking? Because I've talked to people who like insist that Vue is the most popular, or Angular. It almost seems to me like I have to take the 3 and kind of put it as a group, saying these are the most popular. Why do I have a recursion? Oh. This stuff, this the old way I used to do asynchronous stuff. I'm going to try to remove that. Or am I? Maybe I just keep it for now. If it's all self-contained, okay, it's self-contained. It's got some kind of goo here. Well, maybe I do need to keep it because it's not a one-shot asynchronous thing. It's something that you might want to call more than once. Oh, you know what? Oh, it's just storing extra stuff in mock connection. So let me grab that. Oh, it's complete with comments. Scheme, host, and IP, and port. So let's just grab that. And put it into my mock connection. All right. What happened here? Didn't like mock server. Is that not what I called it? Okay, what is it trying to tell me here? A variable declared with an auto type cannot appear in its own initializer. Oh, it got renamed badly. This also got renamed badly. There we go. That should do it, right? So that should still compile. And we're not using this class yet, but we're getting set to use it. Let me just review it. So when we ask it to connect, so it's got a connections allow thing, so we can simulate if we let the connection succeed or not. It stores what connection they requested, sets up some delegates, like it should. Saves the connection and notifies the test that it's been attempted, and returns it back to the unit under test. I think that's all we need, right? Okay, so let's set up. Let's use some of the setup from another test. Pick one that's not so complicated. Actually, I guess this is all we need. I'm going to copy the whole thing, though. I've been trying to follow this pattern where I break each unit test into 3 parts. Arrange is to set up the thing we're going to test, and there's no expectations or assertions. If there is something that might fail, I want another test that's a simpler one to catch that and not have redundant checks. Act, we should check the return value. Actually, where I copied from didn't check it, so that's bad. We should have an expectation for that. And the arrange for this is the act of the other one, and I don't need that. And then assert is checking for side effects. Hey there, Crystal Elysium. Why do you use VS Code over, for example, Visual Studio? I have a command for that. Oh, no, I should have a command for that, but it's a short one. Yeah, I use it mostly because I want to have the same experience on Linux and Mac. But I do switch to Visual Studio if I run into problems with the debugger, because there are certain things, like yesterday, I realized there's no raw memory window in the debugger in VS Code, so I have to flip to Visual Studio for that. Also, there's no way to tell it to stop when an exception is thrown. VS Code will only stop if the exception is uncaught right now. So a couple of things you might see me switch back to Visual Studio for that, which is why I have 2 build directories. How do I show that? Okay, you can see it here. Build is the traditional Visual Studio build, and build-VS Code is what I have set up in VS Code, which uses Ninja, which I kind of like, because the output is very terse. It's only showing me what the compiler errors are. So I hope that answers the question. I'm trying to make it so that so the I don't have any links in the VSC command, but some of my commands do have links for more information. So if I didn't answer the question well enough, let me know and I'll try to do 2 things. Answer it and then put it back into my command, like a link to more information. All right, so removing all that stuff. Setting up a timekeeper. Okay, this needs to be changed because that's too... We really should give it both factories at the same time, and we should rename it factories. Let's do that. So we're going to expect that there's a method called factories and that it takes... This might be a little bit of a pain because I think I call it in a ton of places. Fortunately, they're all the same line, so maybe I could be clever about this. Search replace that one line with a different line. Can I do that? Let's see if I can do this. So Control H, replace that with factories, and what I really want is a new line. Oops. That, okay, let's try. I hit a key by accident. New line. Try to get the alignment right. Actually, what am I doing? I don't need to do this. I can just do it once and then go and do the search replace. So here's the first time. I want to give it two things. A mock, I guess mock server will be the first one. And then a mock client transport factory next. So here's what I want to replace it with. And this is what it used to be. Question is, will that work? Let's see if it works once. It didn't. It horribly failed. Okay. What if I do regular expressions? Then I have to escape these. Sometimes regular expression search replace allows you to insert new lines. I might have to actually encode the new lines though. Yeah, I might have to. So let me try to encode the new lines where they go. So that would be one here. Another one here. Another one here, right? Oh, almost. Okay, it's a little bit of space misalignment. It's in the replacement, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, but no space at the beginning. This probably has too little spaces. No, it has an extra one. Okay, that's what it is. As you can tell, you can probably tell I'm a perfectionist. I'm gonna keep doing this until I get it absolutely right. There we go. I can replace all, and I'm done. Yay! Search replace is awesome. All right, so one thing at a time. We need a transport factory. So this server, we need a client side. Server and client. All right, so here's the server side transport factory. Now we need a client one. The fortunate thing is the WebGate never needs to make a connection with SSL, so it should be a lot easier. I don't need to worry about this SSL requirement. Okay, I should replace this, shouldn't I? This should be server transports. I'm wary about doing a search replace because that word transports in a lot of places. Actually, transports with an S should be okay though, right? I can call that. Oh no, see, it's going to replace that. Shucks. It's in a lot of places though. I'm tempted to just do it anyway. So server transports. I just have to go and replace that to fix it up. That's not too bad. Then I can say the same thing. This one too needs to be different. Okay, then we need a similar thing for clients. Client transports. Whoops. Moved the mouse wheel and it jumped. This goes there. That goes there. Basically doing the same thing. We're just making a new one and putting it into the list and returning it back. The idea is that when the WebGate asks for a transport to be made, we make one, give it back, but we also save a copy for ourselves so we can check that as a side effect. Like, did the WebGate actually ask for one? And then we don't need this. And we don't need that. Which means we can get rid of that. I think that's good. Okay, we don't have that, so let's go to that. And duplicate that. These are used to mock these server transport layers. Transport layer. Server. Client. So why am I using shared pointer here? I'm glad you asked. It's because we're sharing this between two parts of the code, and its lifetime may extend beyond the lifetime of this fixture. So it's just to help prevent it from being used after it's been destroyed. Shared pointer allows you to, it's like reference counted objects. It adds a reference count to the pointer, and then it takes care of making sure it's not deleted until the last reference to it is released. Okay. So now the only, okay, no, we still have a problem here. Is it because that's capitalized? That actually shouldn't be capitalized. That's not the error. What's the error? Okay, there are the arguments are not. Oh, okay, yeah. This we need to change. So this is going to be server and that's client, and we need to go define those. That's all in this include, I believe. Oh, hold on. It might be in the subclass. Might be in the subclass. Subclass. Yeah, here we go. I separate classes sometimes into two parts, and you'll see this pattern. The WebGate inherits another class, a superclass. That superclass, I put an I in front to indicate that it's a pure interface. So the only things in that class will be definitions of types and then pure virtual methods. The idea behind that is that if I go back to my diagram and I show the hierarchy within the server, let's say we're talking about coordinator instead of WebGate. No, we can talk about this. I need to fix this. It should be not a filled in diamond. But anyway, the coordinator is going to talk to the WebGate, but the coordinator doesn't need all the methods of the WebGate. It only needs the methods of the WebGate that it advertises are the functions of the WebGate, of any kind of WebGate, a real one or a fake one or an alternative one. So all the methods that all kinds of WebGates need to support are in this official I WebGate. Now, WebGate happens to be the implementation of that requirement in terms of actual network connections. An alternative would be in my coordinator tests, you'll also see the I WebGate or the fake WebGate. So it implements the same interface. The difference between the real WebGate and the mock WebGate is going to pretend to connect to the network. The real one will. But the coordinator doesn't know the difference. That allows me to separate the coordinator from the WebGate and test the coordinator in isolation. So I went through that really fast, but I guess the too long didn't read part is that anything relating to the concrete WebGate that's only used for the real network will go in WebGate HTTP, and that includes the actual transport factories. We don't need them for the pretend WebGate, for example. All right, so that became server transport, and we'll need to annotate this. So because we need to be listening for connections both internal that don't use TLS and external which do, the factory is told whether or not we need to add transport layer security. The client side, it's much simpler. We're only going to make connections to other servers, so we don't need the TLS flag. We can just get rid of that argument like that. And this becomes client transport. We want a new client transport, and we don't need this argument anymore. I forgot to say server here. Okay, that is It's interesting. That should only have been defined if I included the header. Something else must be including the header. Okay, and then setting the factories, right? I decided to rename that. Actually, let me go and do a search for that. Those are all the 3 things I have to rename it in, right? So yeah, why don't we just do a replace and all? To get us at least a little bit further. Okay, you guys didn't hear that note, right? Oh no, you did. Okay, so it's not working. I had tried to set this up. I'll show you guys. I tried to set this up so that oh, I forgot to do it. Okay, that's what I intended to do. So that you guys wouldn't be hearing Windows noises and say, oh, is that my computer? I meant to mute that, but I think I just forgot to do it. So that's the suggestion from a viewer yesterday. Let's see if it works. So now, you didn't hear it. I didn't hear it either. That's okay. I would rather hear it through an alternative audio output, but I noticed that doesn't work. You cannot pick anything but default there. I use voice meter, and if I do aux input, then I can hear it, but you can't. I would like to have done that here, but it doesn't let me do it. So I have to mute it for myself too. Feels bad, man. Okay. Here, let's do it, the thing. And then we're going to make, it's going to be server. Okay, so sorry about those noises, but you shouldn't be hearing them anymore because I just muted the whole thing. I have a set of notes that I try to follow, like a checklist on what to do before and after streaming, and that's a new item, so I really should rethink how I make my checklist so that I don't skip things. This is the factory found never new server, and the wrapping thing doesn't quite work for here. I have to do it manually. Client transport layer. Okay. Test the factory functions to be called whenever new transport layers are needed. Okay. So that's going to be, it's a concrete method. It's the term that refers to what I'm doing here is dependency injection. So WebGate doesn't actually know how to make a network connection. It wants you to tell it how by giving it a function to call in order to start listening on a port, and another function to call whenever you want to make a new connection going out. That way, WebGate, when we test it in its unit tests, we still aren't making real network connections or listening on real ports. It's all pretend, but in the real thing, we would have a factory that does make the network connections. So dependency injection, I should probably have a command for that. I do that quite often. It's a long word though. How about DI? Just to explain what I'm doing. Alright, so that's done. We've got to go to the implementation and fix it there. Just fix that up, and then we can make this the new thing. Alright, so this guy is now oh, no, I don't want to replace it everywhere. Oh, hey there, Not Zane. I'm not using boost DI. I'm just doing it manually. I mean, dependency injection is not really that big a deal. It's just a fancy word for you have 3 objects. One is the integration object, and the other 2 are library objects or utility objects or subcomponents, whatever you want to say. And the integration object just tells one how to talk to the other by giving a pointer or a reference of one to the other. That's dependency injection. It's a really handy technique when you want to isolate components so they don't have to know how to find each other initially. Some integration layer like your main program sets it up and tells them about it. If you look at my main, it kind of will make more sense. Let's look at the main. So my main function actually fits on one page. So maybe it's not that easy to read, but I'll highlight the interesting parts. So we make a WebGate, we make a coordinator, and at some point we tell the coordinator where to find the WebGate. That's the dependency injection. The coordinator depends on a WebGate, but it could use any WebGate. It could use a real one or a fake one. So we actually made a real one. In our unit test, we would make a fake one. And through the mobilize method, we're injecting that dependency. So coordinator gets its dependencies fulfilled. All right. Passing variables inside the constructor. I mean, dependencies is a loose term, right? What are your dependencies? Your dependencies could be your configuration, your parameters. I like to reserve dependency for bigger things like an entire object or sometimes even an entire library. Those are like dependencies. Something smaller like a variable, I'll just call it a parameter. When you think about it though, a parameter can be considered a dependency, right? Because the function needs the parameter, depends on it. This is the function to call whenever I need server transport layer. So this is a pattern I'm getting into today that I should have maybe anticipated this and named that server to begin with, so that I could just add the client one when it came time to add it. Another thing about TDD, by the way, I'll spam that command again. Another thing about that is, oh, I misspelled that horribly. When you see me writing the code, I'm not writing the complete code. I'm only writing what I need to get the test passing. It's incremental. We build up the code as we build up the test cases. So if you see me writing the code and I purposefully skip checking something, it might be because in my mind I'm thinking my test doesn't actually make sure I checked it or not. If it's really important to check, I'll have a unit test that covers that actually checks to make sure it was checked, right? And a lot of the time, I'll forget. It'll come out later as a use case that I thought would have worked doesn't, and then the good thing is that I catch it when I make the use case documentation, which is my unit tests. So, okay, this is server transport factory. So we're only really introducing things it doesn't use yet. So this should build, but just not really do anything new yet. Okay, I missed some things. Yeah. Oh, this is in the main program. So for now, I think I'm going to cheat really bad and then just say null for client transport, because we don't have one yet. I don't like this name being that, so we'll call it base server. Okay. Okay, cool. I think it's going to link. So we didn't add anything we needed to use yet, so it's not going to compile the error anymore. Just yeah, we haven't even filled the test case in, so we didn't break anything. You'll see me run the unit tests a lot to make sure I didn't break something unexpectedly. If I do, I might stop and as a side trip go fix what I broke before I continue. Hold on, I need to keep my voice healthy. Working on keeping my stream up more than 3 hours. Right now my voice gives out around 3 hours and I have to wrap it up, which is a shame. Oh, what's going on with my camera? Because it's getting darker? Color key isn't quite right. Let me turn up the aggressiveness of it. Oh no, we have a bright spot on it. I don't want that green dot, but also don't want my face to disappear. It's like a balancing act here. If I turn this up, and I can turn this down. You know, if I had a more professional setup, I wouldn't need to do this. If the weather would just cooperate. Apologies if my camera looks a little weird from time to time. Yeah, that green dot's there. That bugs me too much. Perfectionist here. I'll do that. So the edges of things will be a little. Oh no, that's not good. It looks okay there. I'm looking at my OBS thing, so sorry about not making sense. Hold on, let me move this a little bit. No, that made it worse. Oh well, I think we're gonna have to live with a green, not a blue, a green dot over me. Is that green dot there? No. Oh, I think the color got. Okay, hold on. Let me turn off the color key completely. Let me grab this. Oh, I think I might know what it is. I'm getting direct sunlight that's causing these bands. Hold on. Turn that back on, and this is around what it should be. I'm gonna turn my camera off just really briefly. I'm getting up to adjust the window. No, we still have a dot. That didn't work. That didn't work. Hold on. Reflection coming from. Getting a weird reflection. Hold on. Just a minute. My apologies. This isn't gonna work out so well. Let's see how this goes. Are there bands? Oh, I know what it is. It's the other window. Hold on. I think I figured it out. So I can turn this key back on. And maybe adjust it a little bit. Okay, cool. It was a different window. Shoot. The bands are gone, but the color's not right. Let me grab that. This is pro streamer stuff. There might be a better way to do this, but for now, my solution is to grab that color, just put it back in my color key. So that's D. Oh, no. Oof. No. Wrong color. There's better. That's better. Okay. Phew. Enough of seeing my face there. Back to work. Sorry about that distraction. Yeah, so I just need to satisfy this for now. We're not using the client transport, and I'm not using the main yet again, so as long as that builds and this runs, we can move on to doing more of the test here. So We've set it up now. It has both server and client transports. How do we get it to act? We get it to act by asking it to make a connection. And we can put anything we want in here. So we'll put, I don't know, www.example.com, port 1234. Does that sound good? And it should return, what does it return exactly? A WebSocket. Okay. How will it do that? It's going to make an HTTP connection and try to upgrade it. So we need to be prepared to accept that message and then return the correct response. So in our fixture, when we set up this client transport, right, it's going to get a mock client connection. So then what does a mock client connection do when it receives data? Or really when data is sent. It puts it into a buffer. Okay, so we need to do a little bit more than this, I think. I'm trying to think, where did I have a test framework that worked with WebSockets before? Maybe an HTTP server test? That would be client tests. Did I deal in WebSockets here? I have upgraded connection. Right. Here's the thing, we have to wait for a connection on the transport, which I think we have, and then we need to await, we need to have this awareness of, okay, I think I have that too, await requests, right? No, I don't. So this mock connection has the ability to await requests. Let's steal that stuff. Right here. Put that here. Okay, we need to store those requests. Okay, so this send data is a little bit more work than this send data. This one just stores it, and this one tries to parse it as if it was a server, right? So this is like a pretend server trying to parse it. I guess we can do both. We can do both, right? This might disrupt the other tests unless I like have a switch. I can tell a connection act like you're a server or act like you're a client. Okay, yeah, so that's instead of that. So we need a reassembly buffer. Reassembly buffer, and we'll need a server. So in addition to saving the data we get, we're also trying to reassemble and parse them as HTTP requests. And if we get one, we put it back into a vector. So now we can wait for them. So that's actually all part of the act, and it's synchronous. So here's where it gets a bit tricky. I can't put the code in here to wait for the request and respond to it because this blocks. So I have to code it completely into the callbacks. So yeah, instead of storing the request, we have to act on it. And we don't have that either, so we need to pull that in. Yeah, so we're not going to be storing the requests. We're just going to be acting on them. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should just push this to something that the test sets up. Like if all of this was in a callback up to the test, then we could put it with the test. So for example, what does this test do? Not this one. Collapse. Oh, not client tests. Server tests? No, client tests. This one. I want to look at that test. Right, does the await request. It grabs it, and then makes a response and sends it back. It's actually not that much code. Huh. Yeah, that's right. Okay. We'll copy that with the warning. So here. Yes, so what to name it? Original? No, we don't need to do this. Oh, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe I do. What's the context of this? Oh, it's just clearing the local, so we don't need that. Okay. This is just part of some dumb test. I don't need that. So the way this is going to act now is whenever a connection is told to send data. Okay, so yeah, this entire thing needs to be conditional because if this connection is set up to be simulating a server, then we'll be reassembling the data that's sent, and if it matches a request, we'll send a response saying, yeah, we're upgrading it to a WebSocket. And then the WebGate will then assemble a WebSocket representation and return it to us. Right, so this all needs to be conditional. If pretending to be a server, then do all this stuff. I think the original code had me actually do that in either case, right? Oh, except for that. It's only inside this inner if, so this, for the else we do it all the time, right? Okay, so we need that flag. That's a mode of our mock. All these are commented. It's making me want to comment them, but I don't really want to do it right now. So it's not await requests anymore, is it? We're really only going to be dealing with one request at a time, I think. to issue an HTTP request. No argument. Indication of whether or not the request was received for a reasonable amount of time. So there's this is gone. I suppose I need to have a flag. Well, okay, let me back this up and actually do have a number. What did I have there? HTTP. Okay. We will just have back it up even more. We'll have a request, but instead of size, let's just say number. We'll call this request 208 because I want this to be also a num request made, right? And then we'll just have that as a counter. And we'll just increment it before we do the signal. Like that. All of this is while holding the mutex, so it should be good. Where was that? Hold on. Yeah, same mutex. Cool. So it's in this client transport, right? When we make a connection, we need to make the connection to say pretending to be a server. Now when it's told to send data, it'll actually pretend that the data's been sent and then pretend a response is sent back. Hope I'm not missing something. If I was missing something, you guys would tell me, right? I can count on you guys. So hopefully this does the right thing. So what would we expect? What do we expect? How do we test to make sure? I guess what we do is we expect true for... Oh, hold on. There was a way that we got the number of transports made, right? Hold on, where was that? Collapse everything and scroll up. It was like... Yeah, it was like this bind stuff, right? Right, it pushes it into mock transports, so... It actually should be, we should assert it's one. It should only ask for one client transport, and then we can then get the client transport. Actually, it's dereference it, and then we can go to the first index, right? And then that is a structure. So, oh no, hold on. It's a vector of shared pointers. So H1's a transport. So right, shared pointer vectors is shared. So we have the mock transport. What's in it? Oh, okay, yeah. So we can call it to await the connection, right? Or wait, I just lost my place. Hold on, was I changing the wrong code up here? Oh no, it's one more direction. So we have to get the connection, then we have to ask the connection for requests. Yeah. So assert again that its connections size is 1. Then we can get the connection. client transport connection 0. Then from that, we can expect that the host name is that, right? For, what was it? Server? No. It wasn't scheme. It was something like scheme. Although we should check that too, right? HTTP. What did I name it? Host name or IP address. Okay. And then port. Was it just port? Okay, yeah, port. Does that all really need to test? Because a web gate... No, we should probably also check that every request the WebGate makes is a valid WebSocket upgrade request, right? So right now it doesn't do that. We should do that. Well, okay, it does it minimally. It's a valid request, but we should also... are we storing it? I'm not storing it. Maybe I should store it like the other one did, then we could look at it. Yeah, let's do that. So that was back here, right? Yeah, so let me store this after all. And then let's... Where is it used? Here, we just push it back. So we'll just store it. Same place, right? Yeah. Actually, we don't need this num request made then, do we? And this can go back to this like it was before. We don't need that. Okay. Hey Romania, hey, how's it going? And I didn't see you say hi until 4 minutes later, so I apologize. And Kinkomatics, how's it going? Yeah, try out my new commands. Yeah, I goofed up yesterday and forgot to implement something. This thing, it's still not implemented, so we're working on implementing that today. It's the code in the actual WebGate component to make a WebSocket connection. I thought it was there, and what led me into thinking it was there is that the mock WebGate correctly pretended to make connections. So when we were testing the coordinator, it was working, but now when we're using the coordinator in the real thing, it's not working because we're not actually ever making a real web connection. It felt really dumb. I'm doing some React at some point for the client side, but that's not gonna be for a while. I think I want to have the server actually have some state, and in order for the client to show something. Although I guess we could have a client that just connects and says connected, right? It wouldn't be much of an app. It'd basically be an Atom pass or Atom fail. Explain like you're 5 what I'm doing. So I have this game I'm developing, and that link is to more information, but it's going to be a multiplayer online game. So right now I'm working on the server infrastructure. Not quite DevOps yet. I'm trying to build in some DevOps, but so this diagram, I don't know if I don't think a 5-year-old would be able to understand this, but it's maybe as basic as I can make it. That the architecture of the whole game will be: you're here in your browser, the game server is here, and it's broken up into 2 categories. There's orchestrator, which just starts up the other guys. The other guys are all copies of each other. They're a cluster, and they need to talk to each other to ensure that they all have the exact same game state, so that if the client goes to any one of these, they can play the game, and clients connected to other servers can interact without there being confusion and delay, right? So right now I'm working on getting these connections between Realm servers going. There's nothing else in the Realm server. Just going to connect and say hi, and that's all we can do at first. Cool. I need to work on making it explainable to a 5-year-old, though. It would help if I actually had a 5-year-old to test explanations with, but my kids are now beyond 5, so I can't do that anymore. All right, so I think the test is set up. Now we actually have to have it do the thing. So the test is we set up the WebGate with everything it needs. We tell it to bind. Then we tell it, hey, go make a connection. What we expect it to do, actually I need to build this in, right? Assert false null pointer. It should not be we should not get a null WebSocket back. We should get a real WebSocket. And the side effects are that the WebGate should have asked for a client transport. It then should have asked for a connection. And that connection, it should have requested HTTP with that host and port number. Fiverr? I don't get it. Sorry. And hi, I'm a goat ba. Thanks for the follow. I saw it right before my stream, actually. Okay, so do I want to test any more? Or is that oh no, I did want to test more. I wanted to look at the actual request and make sure that it looks like a valid WebSocket request. So let me steal from the WebSocket stuff, because there's a good test in there to check to make sure that the message is correct. I think it would be this. Well, hold on. This may or may not be it. No. Not that one. It's one of these, though. Could be this. Okay, let's just sort. It's gonna involve this. Oh, actually, this might be it. These are all the things we expect to see in a request to upgrade to a WebSocket, right? They requested WebSocket version 13, that there's a key, that the key. Okay, this actually makes sure the key equals what we expect the key to be. Oh, it just makes sure that it's base 64 encoded correctly. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, so I think I'll steal this. Reuse this piece. So write the request. So we'll assert that it made a request. Client connection request size, and then const auto request is client connections request 0. I could type, right? And then for this to work, we need the base 64 library. We can do that. So I need to put it there, and then I probably need to pull it in to my dependencies here. And which means it'll rerun cmake. Okay, I misspelled assert apparently. Okay, cool. So I'm going to verify that test runs and fails. Cool. We'll set up the filter so we just look at that one test. Make connection. Right, so test is complete, but the code doesn't do anything. So it's failing the very first check that it's not null. So it's null, so which is a failure. Okay, so first things first, in the code, we're going to want to make a WebSocket, right? Let's try to cheat and just return it. This is maybe an adversarial approach to test-driven development, which is here, by the way, which is what I'm doing. Interesting. So Did I not build? I did build. How come it returning null? Okay, I don't understand that. The adversarial approach, meaning I do the minimum to get the test to pass, and this should have... Oh, I'm dumb. I'm totally dumb. I just declared it. I didn't actually make one. So I like to do this as sort of a shortcut to making it. So now it'll make one and return it, so it won't be null, but it won't be functional either. So it got further in the test. So we just do this until it gets through the test, and if I missed anything in the test specification, I'll discover it by the fact that I didn't have to write code that I thought I would have needed to write. So that's sort of an adversarial approach to TDD. As in, if you can imagine two different people, one writing the test and one writing the code, if person one who made the test said, okay, this is complete specification of what you need to do, and then person two is a real dick and then goes and says, okay, I'm gonna make it pass, but not really work in the real world, they would attempt to do these things. And I could take that to an extreme where I could like say we're always going to try to connect to that no matter what they told us, and they would force the test writer to do it twice with two different names. But that would be going beyond what's reasonable, I think. Hey, Sourcify. How's it going with you guys? I feel like I'm a couple days behind because I thought I had written this and I didn't. Okay, so we get a WebSocket, but the test is telling us it expected the WebGate to ask for a transport. So hey, let's satisfy it. Let's ask for a transport. All right, so const auto transport. That should get us further in the test. Right, so it got us a little further. Now we have a transport, but now the test says, well, that transport's got to ask for a connection. Okay, fine. Transport, make me a connection. And well, here's where I could go into an extreme and hard code stuff, but I'm going to try to do the right thing in using the actual parameters that were given. Okay, it's HTTP always. We can hard code that. And then the host and the port. And it's going to give us back, what does it give us back exactly? A shared pointer to an HTTP connection. Okay, so that gets us a little further. If I didn't misspell something, what did I do? Doesn't take 3 arguments, really? Oh, it wants 2 delegates. Right, so... yeah, so this is if we dealt with the transport directly. What I designed WebSocket to do was to kind of do this for us. So the way it's done is... let's see if I can get this right. WS arrow open... I don't know, start open as client, and then it wants a request. Wants a request. Really? Forgetting how to use my own stuff. Is it complete open as client? That does it? Yeah, it is. So it gets the connection. Oh, okay. Hold on. Maybe I'm not understanding this completely. Does this not set the data? It does. Oh, no, it's done by open. Open is called by open as finish open as client, right? Yeah, here. But wait. How do we get the response before? Okay, I need to look at how I did this in a larger application. Yeah, this is assuming that, hold on, what did the test do? Yeah, the test just assume a response is somehow you get it back. Because it's not really, right. When you're testing a WebSocket, you don't really care how the transport layer worked, do you? So I bet you if I looked at the actual application I made that deals with WebSocket as a client, it probably does set callbacks for data and does all that. That would have been here. Yeah, in fact, I was looking at that earlier. Oh, it goes through one of these guys. I think that's the ticket, right? Yeah, okay. So we use one of these HTTP client things. We tell it about the client transport, and we ask it to make the request. Actually, that makes more sense now that I think about it. So, WebGate. So we can reuse clients. So let's just put the client here. Oh, thanks for the bits, Kankamatics. I don't have any spiffy custom event notification for bits because I really didn't know what to do. I need to have it fit into the theme of my stream, which doesn't really exist yet. All my other events are like gaming or meme related. But thanks, Kankamatics. Appreciate it. So this is used to establish WebSocket connections with other servers. That's exactly what it's used for. Yeah, I'm sort of still a poverty streamer, and then I'm using Stream Elements, and so I don't have like a spiffy way of finding commands other than enduring the streamelements.com list. But oh yeah, Kankamatics helped me out a lot in the last few days because he recommended a lot of commands to add. So I have a bunch of those. So let's say you're asking what's he doing in VS Code, right? I use it because of that. It runs the same, almost the same, I should say, on Linux and Mac. So what are the extensions I use? Two main ones, C, C++, and CMake tools. The big caveat is my extension setup really only works if you're willing to use CMake, and that's sort of a controversial thing because it's got a steep learning curve. And there are alternative tools. CMake is used to make the build system, so it's like AutoMake, and using the same description, I can make it for Visual Studio or Xcode or theoretically Android or any other kind of system. So it's sort of an abstraction, but it's got a steep learning curve. So yeah, what other commands did I add? My mind's drawing a blank, but I added a bunch. Depends on what people ask. Oh yeah, code journey. I spent some time and wrote sort of like a mini biography code-wise of like why did I learn coding? When did I learn it? And at what point did I start streaming? That kind of thing. To use something like Clang Formatter, I'm just using what the VS Code and its extensions are giving me. So if it might be using that, I don't know. I don't use it manually or directly or intentionally, if that's the question. So the thing that's going to help us out with connections is a web client, right? Let's call it that in its own name too. All right, so we're going to want to set it up when we are binding, I think. Or no, not this. There's like a, I guess we could do it there. Really, we can do it at any point that we're given the factories, I think. So we could do it here. Oh no, it has a mobilize demobilize thing, so we should probably line that up with bind unbind. But I can do the other things. I might set up diagnostics, right? I might do that here. So now we'll get diagnostics from it. What else might I do with it? Actually, that's the only thing. And really, I should do this when the thing is constructed, like way up here. Okay. Yeah, so this bind instance unbind, that pair, that's probably where I should do the mobilization, right? So probably right here. So mobilize, right? It's gonna want some stuff. Oh, I put it into a structure. Okay. Still doesn't like it. Oh, it doesn't actually fail. Okay, good. I like functions that don't fail. I don't have to see what happened. What are its dependencies? I think the intervals and stuff have defaults. Okay, we need a timekeeper. Check. We need the transport. Check. Okay, it doesn't match. Oh, it wants a factory. Oh, I see. We just need to call it once. There. So we really will only be calling the factory once, and we're going to reuse this transport. I guess that makes sense. And then just to make sure I got it covered, yeah, these have defaults, so we don't need to worry about anything else. So I need to turn around and unbind it here, I suppose. Or demobilize it. There we go. Okay, now that we have a HTTP client, why is this still underscored? I don't know. Oh, maybe it's getting confused parsing this. So yeah, the connection will be established by asking the client to make a connection, right? Request. So it's going to return us a transaction object. It wants a request, and then whether or not we're going to persist the connection. Yes, upgrade. Yeah, we have to provide an upgrade delegate. Well, eventually. Let's just start with making the request. And then we'll just say transaction. We minimally have to make the request here, right? Request. Well, let's call it HTTP request, actually. All right, so I think, if I remember right, the WebSocket has a, when you do start open as request, it fills in the request for you. So I just need to do this. It fills in like the keys and the right headers, and then you give it to the client. It makes the request. This transaction object, it's your the record that you can now wait on. So if we wanted to, we could wait on a response. But right now, we'll see if that minimally gets us further into the test. I'm wondering if that was, yeah, see, it went away. Let's see if that gets us further. Hey there, Admiral Kier. That's right? How's it going? Oh, interesting. Oh, right. We didn't have to make one because the client makes it for us. So isn't that good that our test checked it? It's like, no, you didn't want to make two. We wanted it to make only one. Cool. Now it got further. So it totally didn't go to the right place, did it? Or maybe we didn't store that. You find any clue about raw memory? Yeah, I did. I looked it up. So it's in my follow-up here. So about raw memory using the debug view, I found the Stack Overflow post that says there isn't one yet, but there's a ticket filed with Microsoft here issue 941 that's still open, and basically, I think it's like a lot of other VS Code tickets. Microsoft waits until enough people vote for it. So if it's something that you want, go vote for it. So let me drag it over here. I voted for it, so we're up to 43 votes now to add debugging support for memory, viewer, and disassembly code to VS Code. Up to 43 votes. You can kind of tell because they say things like, no, it's not been implemented. Sometimes they're a little bit nicer and they say, if you want this implemented, go upvote this ticket or upvote the original post. But there are some workarounds in here. They talk about these manual commands to GDB if you're using GDB. I don't know if it's the same with Visual Studio, but you can examine memory this way. So you have to type in the address and you have to know the syntax, so it's a little bit clunky. So yeah, for now, no, we have to go and use Visual Studio if we want a raw memory view. What else about that? That was basically it. So by the way, if there are other things from yesterday's stream or even before, and if I took a note about it, you can always go back to my log post, my log page, and go to the follow-up section and see what if I took a look at it or not, and if so, what did I have to say? Okay, so the test is saying it didn't set a scheme or an address or the right port number. So, oh, that might be because that's expected to be filled in. That probably is. So, yeah. How does right? It makes sense. How does the HTTP client, or how does the WebSocket know what port you want to go to? We're expected to fill that stuff in. So let's do it. So that's the target. And we do a URI. Let's just, do we want to construct one from a string, or? You think about this. No, let's just do it element-wise. So let's just fill in scheme, or set scheme, right? HTTP. Set host. I should have known that because we're passing these in and not using them. Set port. Actually, technically, we're not supposed to use HTTP, right? We're supposed to use WS. I should probably check that. So make sure it's WS as the scheme, for WebSocket, basically. Okay, let's see if that gets us further in the test. Cool. Got us further in the test. Problem is, our test didn't make sure that the connection was lasting. Oh well, it did do enough to get a WebSocket, right? We just don't know what it's going to do with it. I guess that's what it's returned here. So maybe we get back to WebSocket and we're good to go. Oh, hold on, no, we forgot to call finish open as client. What does finish open as client actually do? Oh, thanks for the bits again. And thanks for stopping by. And yes, appreciate the... what's the right way to say when you say someone says good luck to you? I guess it's thanks. Thanks, Kidcomatics. And hey there, said who 12. I recognize said who 12. I only have a few VIP slots left, but now, there you go, said who, you're a VIP now. So yeah, the policy for my channel right now is regulars become VIPs as long as I have slots. And sometimes people ask who gets to be moderator. I see moderator as a responsibility, so I don't want to place it on just anybody. And I really haven't needed mods yet. If I ever do, then I might look for volunteers who would like to have the responsibility, because I think it's just impolite to just shove it on people who aren't prepared, willing to do it. So yeah, I have a few VIP slots left if there are regulars or people from Adam's channel that I chat with a lot. All right. Yes, so finish. I'm kind of curious. What does finish as client do for WebSocket? It does. I know it does something. I just don't remember. Finish open as client. Okay, it just checks stuff and then it doesn't open. What does open do? It sets up the callbacks. Right. So we can check to make sure that happened by trying to send something to the WebSocket, right? So we would have to make a WebSocket that's right. That either make a WebSocket or pretend to be a WebSocket and send it a message and expect a response back. I suppose we should do that. So we would try to send data to this client connection, right? I gotta think about this. Client connections was receiving data. So now it will be receiving data from the WebSocket. So, right, so if I send a message to the WebSocket, maybe I should make this another test. Yeah, let's do that. Let's break this up. This will be make connection starts WebSocket. Because that test is getting too long anyway. So we'll do a lot of the same setup but with fewer checks here. Hey there, Murdium. I hope I'm saying your name right. Good morning, good evening. Okay, make connection. Make connection finishes WebSocket? Finishes is a weird word. How about not close. It's like it fully sets it up. Establishes. So we have starts WebSocket and then we have establishes WebSocket. So we don't need to repeat this part because the other test covered it. And we also don't need any of these asserts. All right. I do want to grab this connection because we're going to talk through that. We don't need request anymore. So this will be part of the act. Or really this is part of setup. No, it's part of act because, yeah. So when I look at this later, I'll realize, okay, I needed to break up testing of make connection into two pieces. Like, does it get started correctly? Like the correct HTTP request is sent. And then establish means when we set the response, did it actually give us a WebSocket that is tied to this connection or not? Because right now it isn't because I didn't write that code. All right, so how do we verify it? I think all we need to do in the act again, because it's directly observable. No. Right, it's part of how we check it. It's a side effect of make connection should be that it allows us to send something and it should be received on this client connection, right? So, okay, before we do that, I believe all the data is being stored in this data received, and we need to clear that. Then we'll expect to see the WebSocket encoding of that message appear on the connection. So that would be something I don't want to figure out. I just want to copy from a previous test that did the same thing. I'm pretty sure I did the same kind of thing. Hello world. Yeah, here we go. So if it's a server, it will do it that way. Okay, so client is a little bit more complicated, right? It's going to have this mask. Here we go. So it's exactly this we need. Actually, we should also check that it's not broken. That might be important. So all this gets replaced. And it's not broken by WebSocket. It's like broken, right? Broken. And here it's data received. Not quite. Oh, it's okay. It's a vector instead of a string. Let me pull it out as a string. Data received as string. So this might be a goofy way of doing it, but I don't really know of a better one, where you just use the begin-end iterators as begin-end iterators for the constructor of a string. There we go. See, the thing with WebSockets on the client end, oh, thanks for the follow, Jub's Unofficial. WebSocket in client mode will actually mask all the data it sends. So that's why we have to XOR with the mask to recover the original message, and then we're asserting that this is the data is this. The data matches the original data after it's been masked. So I don't know, how do you guys like that stream notification based off of Link to the Past? I kind of rather enjoyed making it, but I don't know, maybe people think it's corny. Oh, you like it? Good. There are some more cool ones for subs and stuff like that, but don't take that as a request to sub. Please don't unless you mean it, but eventually we'll see them. This is very confusing code. Yeah, I'm sorry. I try to keep things understandable in the unit tests by making the code small, which is why I broke make connection into 2 tests instead of 1, but still it's hard to understand. Whenever I hear that it's hard to understand, I try to think about it as it's a opportunity for me to improve, in that I ought to try to, maybe not initially, but when I come back and refactor this code to make it easier to read, the places where people say it was very confusing code, those are the places I really need to focus on and do some refactoring to make it easier to understand. So sorry when that happens. How long have I been writing this code? This code, there's more information there, but where does that actually go? Okay, that'll lead you to my notebook. Let's look at that, because I don't want you to have to look at it, but I'm just getting started, so I haven't been working on this game code for that long, just this week. But before then, a lot of the stuff that this is based on, so the web server stuff, that was the last 70 streams, so about 200 plus hours. So roughly June of this year till now for everything. You don't have any idea about how web server even works? Oh, I guess I could cover that. So if you really wanted to get into all the detail, I could point you to the YouTube recording of the stream where I actually made the web server. Or actually, maybe I have a diagram. Where would I have put that? Here, maybe? No, this is just showing the different components. I bet you we can find one if we just search for it, right? So, web server, request response. Let's look. If you do an image search, I bet there is a nice diagram. Here we go. I love this diagram. It is so Adam art. So, you're at your computer. You type in a URL. What your browser does is it forms a TCP connection to the server based off of the host name or IP address in that URL. And then the rest of the URL is what's called a resource identifier, or it's part of the URI. It tells the web server, amongst all the files it has or all the resources, which one you want. And then it also puts headers and other stuff. It forms it into a nice envelope, which is the HTTP request. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, I think it is. So that goes routed over the net to the web server. It comes in as a request, formulates the pair of that, which is the HTTP response, and sends that back to your browser, and your browser then interprets the response. And most of the magic is first changing what's in the URL, the identifier, into a locator, a route. So if you're doing web stuff and you hear the word route, it's find out what we should do or where the file is that they asked for. And then the other half of the magic is in the response when it comes back. What does the browser do with it? So if it's HTML, there's a lot of construction of a document structure, and then it pulls in either a default style sheet, or maybe there might be another style sheet that goes in to kind of figure out how to lay it out on your screen and present it. So that's a really, really high level explain like I'm 5 about how web servers work. Web server itself, it just sits there and waits for requests. When it gets one, it just figures out what the response should be. Yeah, Node.js routes. So if our web server was running Node.js, in the code for that, if you see routes, those are sort of different branches in the code that you take depending on what's in the request. Usually a server will send a whole page, but usually in HTML, the page will have links inside to other pages. So it might refer to the fab icon, it might refer to a JavaScript, it might refer to a style sheet. And then that causes the browser to then make more requests. So if you ever want to, I don't know if I can do this without revealing personal info. Let me take it off screen. But what I'm going to do is you turn on Web Developer and you do Network. And then let me off screen do this. And I'm typing in google.com. And then I'm just looking to make sure there's no personal info in here. I don't see any. Okay. There's a nice little timeline here, and you can see the initial HTTP request and response is one row, but that what it got back from the server had more links to other stuff, which resulted in many lookups. So like here is a good example. The original document it got back had a link to an image file. So this browser says, well, to display that, I got to go fetch that. So that is a separate web server request to get that picture, and then it just goes on and on. And more elaborate websites will just continuously be requesting, or they might open special requests that get upgraded. So that's what my stuff is doing. It's taking a request and upgrading it to a WebSocket. So that becomes a bidirectional, either side can talk, and it kind of stays up. It's persistent until either side decides that they're done. But yeah, there's a lot of requests in a typical page that goes back and forth to completely build the page you're looking at. Hopefully I didn't leak anything there. The old Google logo? I don't even remember what the old one was. Oh, you're learning C now, and by the way, hello, Jub's Unofficial. Is it good for beginners? It depends. Depends on why you're learning programming. If it's for fun, then look at C code and does it look fun to you? If not, maybe pick something different. If it's for a job, then could be, depends on the kind of job. So like for embedded developers, for server side, C is a good thing. If it was for making games, I don't know. I'd probably be better to learn JavaScript first, right? A lot of game devs here on Twitch are making their games in either JavaScript for browser stuff or C# and Unity. So I don't know if C would be that great. So you can kind of tell it really depends. So if you want to talk more about it, let us know what are you expecting or wanting to do with your knowledge. C is an old language too, so it's not always the best for beginners because it comes with baggage, historical baggage. I think the most often recommended first languages to learn these days are Python and Python. See what I did there? No. I would say Python's a good thing to pick up if it's your very first language. Do I look like Dennis Ritchie? I've been told that I sound like, not Dennis Ritchie, but, oh, I forget. Well, thank you anyway. I will take that as a compliment. C++, it's good middle. If you master Java, C#, any other high-level languages, yeah. C++ and C are very old languages, and so there's a lot of weird things that make it a bit confusing, especially to new programmers. So that's why I was saying it really depends. Learn it if you like it or if you need it for a job, but maybe for beginning, pick something cleaner and newer like Python or JavaScript. HLSL and GLSL are sort of, the syntax is based on C, but they're special. They're for printing pretty things on the screen, right? Okay, so I think I got this right. This is the gory detail of what we expect the WebSocket to spit out when we ask it to send a text message. So this gives you a little opening up under the hood to see what it is. The WebSocket, when you send a text message, it puts in a little header in front, and the header says a couple different things. It says, hey, this is the complete message. It has a certain length, and that's all encoded in these first 2 bytes. And also, since one direction of a WebSocket is always masked, so an XOR with a certain mask code that's random is applied, we have to unmask it to check. And the reason why it's masked, I don't fully understand myself, but it has to do with preventing cache poisoning. So if you look up WebSocket cache poisoning, you'll probably get to an article about it. So anyway, I think this will fail because we never actually finished the setup of the WebSocket. So this will show us, yeah. So, it didn't run any tests. Why not? Did I? Oh, because I added something to the name. There we go. So it starts a WebSocket, but the established WebSocket's failing because we don't actually get any data when I tell it to send text. That's because the WebSocket's not fully established. So to do that, there's a function that balances the start open as client. And we can only really call it when we get back the response. And I think the way I have this set up is it's only if the upgrade succeeds, right? Let's see. I did it here, I think. Yeah. So when we make a request of the server, there's this little function that we ask the client to call us back if our request to upgrade succeeds. So we're going to want that. So that goes in this original request. And we'll keep true as in we want to keep the connection persistent. And then here's our callback. Let me fix the formatting. So it looks like we need a flag, because we want to basically ensure that that actually did get called. And then we finish it up. Set that flag. So after that's done, we have to wait for the transaction to complete. And I'm just wondering, do I want to, if I have this wait, that means this becomes a synchronous call. Well, it already is synchronous, okay. So let's just copy this. It'll be synchronous with the timeout. So here we go. Oh, I need to remember to drink. Today I'm drinking ginger tea. Which is cold, but that's okay. So how long are we willing to wait? Actually, I think that I only had this timeout for if you hit Control C. So since this is the server end, are we gonna want to have it finish early? I don't know yet, so the answer will be no, because we want to keep it simple. Okay. Oh, I deleted the whole thing, and it's just I want to delete the loop. Oh no, I don't want to delete the loop. What does this await completion do? Does it always have a time? Oh, we don't want to replace. Actually, yeah, I need to go back and replace this with a future, promise future thing, don't I? So we always have to have a time. It's going to time out. Really, I want a variety of this where there is no argument. I need to make a note about that because I think I forgot to do that, and now I'm realizing it. So this was HTTP client transaction should have an overload of await completion that requires no arguments. And we will block until completion, failure, timeout. For now, I guess we'll put, maybe we'll just leave this ridiculously high number. Because that should be enough of a note for me to come back and fix it. Well, no, I might not know to come back to this specifically. Let's put it as a to-do. Once transaction await complete is added, use that instead. And so we don't really care, but we don't really want to abort the wait anyway. The idea is that before it times out naturally, which it does if it hits here, we might want to, like, the idea would be like we poll it frequently like this in a loop, and between checking the state, we also see if someone wanted to stop, you know, to abort the attempt. Yeah, so really we're just going to use a large timeout. It's guaranteed to something will happen, so we don't care about what the return value is. We're just going to switch on the state after that. So, does WebGate even have a diagnostic log? It does. Okay, it does. Cool. We'll use that. So that's, where are we? Okay, we're in the external method. So it's impl diagnostic sender dot send formatted, or string, since we don't need to format this one. And then we can remove that and just say that. And this one, we can take advantage of the formatted variety and get rid of the printf to do that. Cool. Okay, so basically this code is already too long. I need to break this up later. So I'll make a little hint about that by commenting different sections and separating them. Set up a web socket. And form the HTTP request for it. Client side. Okay, and that's this part. And here it's use the HTTP client to send the request. Setting providing a callback if the connection was successfully upgraded to the WebSocket protocol. You like that I use uint 16t instead of u16? Yeah, I use it because it's the standard C library, since C99 defines it, so that's what it is intended to be used for, right? I don't like it when other people don't use it. I understand it's because a lot of code was written before C99 and where this didn't actually exist, so people had to roll their own. I'm suspicious of arguments that say that they still use U16 instead of this for some other reason, because in my mind, if it's in the standard and the standard says the implementation, whatever it is, should make a type that's at least that size, then why wouldn't you use it? One problem might be you expect it to be exactly 16 bits, but I think the standard says it's at least 16 bits. I don't need such a strict requirement that it be exactly. I just need the at least part. But yeah, my first question, if someone is willing to talk about their use of U16, is, well, why did you decide to do that and not Uint16T? I did it at my last job and it annoyed people because the answer was always, this code is 15 years old, so when they wrote it, there was no Uint16T. And now our company policy is we can't go back and touch those because those would be lines of change that then we'd have to explain to the customer, why are we changing those lines? And then it has to go, it just goes on and on forever. It always ends up being a political thing. I'm sure some people listening to know what I mean. Political reasons are sometimes why things are done. Okay, so if it completes, we're going to print these nice things to say completed, but really ultimately, what is this saying here? We really don't need to do this path. Oh no, I do, because the transaction could complete, but not get upgraded. So that's a successful HTTP request response, but it's not what we wanted. So that would go into this else. So two things that might happen. It might get upgraded, but for some reason, our end, we didn't like it. Like it failed our end's checks. Like the server misbehaved maybe. If it wasn't a 101, it might have been a 404. So you can get a successful response saying, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, go away. That would be like a 404 not found status code. So the way we treat is we say we'll log what we got and then we'll say failed to give you a WebSocket. And then these other cases all need to also do the same thing, don't they? If we fall out, it's null pointer. Here's the only successful return. Is that how I want to do this? Actually, you know what? I'm going to, I think, make an improvement to this. I know what we'll do. We'll remove all these returns, and we'll just say return engaged. If yes, return the WebSocket. Otherwise, it's null pointer, right? Engage. Engage number 1. So that's only if we get this callback, right? And only if we successfully finishing opening of the WebSocket given the response. So yeah, the way I intended this to work is you make a WebSocket. Then you tell the WebSocket, hey, we're going to use this as a client side of a WebSocket connection. The WebSocket says, okay, give me your request, which is this, and I'll fill in the rest. So it expects you to set the host name and port number. I don't know if scheme's required, but we did it anyway. It fills in the rest, which is gunk like what version of WebSocket protocol, and then the actual headers that say I want to upgrade and all that. And then it says, okay, here's the request. You go send it. When you get a response, you call me back, which is here. When we do call it back, we pass the connection to use and then the response we got, and the WebSocket says, is this response good? Okay, I'm grabbing the connection. If not, it says, okay, even if that was a valid response, if it's not good for it, it will return false, and then we won't actually use the WebSocket, right? So in the middle is this, we're sending the request to the web client. Web client gives us back a transaction object because it's asynchronous. It says, okay, you can look at this transaction object state, you can wait for it to complete, all that stuff. In the background, it will send the request, receive back the response, or not. And by the state, it'll tell us if it completed, it means it got a response. And then as a side effect, it would have either called this or not. So we check that flag. Other possibilities are it couldn't connect in the first place. It got connected but got broke before it got a response back, or it could have timed out. It could have sent the request and just the server was frozen or something. So hopefully that will do the right thing. Otherwise, I'm going to be mad. Mad. This is different though. This didn't fail before. That succeeded before. What did I do differently? It's throwing an exception. Maybe that's the clue. Maybe not though. This would have thrown an exception too. I guess it's worth it to step through the code. We'll do some debugging. So let's set a breakpoint there and make sure my launch configuration is right. Okay, it's not. So we want make connection for the filter here. And we want to select realms over test. Okay, now we can go. We hit our breakpoint. Let's see how far we get. But actually, we can kind of look at things now. We can look at the request. We can look at its headers. We can see there it actually added 4 headers. These security, I think it stands for, WebSocket version, which is 13. Here's the key, which is supposed to be just randomly generated. Here's the, it's telling the server, hey, we want to upgrade the connection, and then the upgrade, I think this actually says, look at this header for more information about we want to upgrade this connection. The upgrade header says, use WebSocket protocol. What else do we want to look at here? I guess that's it for the request, right? So it's going to make the request. I guess we can just tell it to go. I can put a breakpoint here, though, and see if it gets called. And I put one here and just tell it to go. Okay, we got a callback. We can actually look at the, I think we can look at the stack to see those calls. Right? Send data. Send data from the client, right? And then our callback, right? So our callback here made a response. Let's see, it should have cached the request for later checking, and it made a response and sent it. And then we're getting, it figured out that, hey, okay, no, we received the data. At some point, it'll figure out that it was a complete response, right? Right, and then the status code is 101, which means we're upgrading. We have an upgrade delegate call it, so that's why it's calling it now. And then we're going to finish as, oh, it failed. So it didn't like the response. Okay, so let's repeat and see why did it not like the response. Let's step into that guy. Okay, was it 101? Yes. Had the upgrade token? No. Oh, did I not fill that chunk in? Oh, look at that. I didn't fill any of the headers in. Oh yeah, look, I only said 101 switching protocols, and I didn't bother to set any of the headers. All right. Yep, forgot to do that. Let's do that. So response dot set, no, headers, set header. Instead of writing it from scratch, I'm going to cheat again. Look at what is the server expected to set. That would be what? Complete open as client? There we go. There's what we're supposed to set. There we go. I love it when I can reuse code. So copy-paste is the crudest form of code reuse. But it's still code reuse. The most elegant code reuse would be you publish a library on GitHub and other people actually use it. Okay, so we're supposed to use SHA-1 hash function. Oh, great. Okay, that means I need to bring in hash. Specifically, actually I can just steal from that other code again, right? Hash1 and templates. So it means our test needs hash. My hash functions. Yes, I did write SHA-1 by myself. I didn't do it from nothing. I did it from the Wikipedia article. I still had fun doing it. Oh, okay. It's an arrow. Yeah, the way the WebSocket other end is supposed to do, it's supposed to take the key, add this string to it, then run it through the SHA-1 hash to get a digest, then base64 encode it and put it back in this accept. So that's the handshake. And the reason why that's done is the client wants to make sure that the server didn't actually cache the response. So every time it does, it's going to send a different key. So you'll get a different accept coming back, and it needs to match. Otherwise, the server or someone in the middle cached it or did something weird, and then you don't want to accept it. Oops, I didn't mean to hit F8. Okay, now how are we doing? Now it succeeded. Love it when a plan comes together. So cool, that means it's making connections. We actually have enough of a connection that we can send a text message and, oh, this is the wrong test. Send a message and we actually get junk out of the connection. So if all went well, I should be able to run this with the real server now. Oh, no, we're missing something there, right? I have this set to null. So we're missing the client transport factory. Let me check in my code and then we'll build that transport factory. I say build, but I really mean steal from my other code. I'm gonna run my multi-git to make sure I should have only touched the main repository. Yeah, okay. So I should mention this. All the code I write for reusable components like WebSocket, it's all open source on my GitHub. And I have a nice command for that. So stuff like WebSocket, the HTTP, the hash functions, all that's in my GitHub. The exception is the game I'm writing now. I'm keeping that private for now. But all the bits and pieces that are nice and reusable that you'd want to make your own stuff, they're all free, open source, MIT license. So the only thing you can't do is claim that you wrote it, and I think there's a liability claim in there. Liability clause. So yeah, we added the client transport factory to the WebGate. It uses it to actually make outgoing connections. The test needs hash functions in base64, that's fine. Here it's using it, and it's using a server as well. Should I document that? I ought to. It's the only one that's not documented. 310. There we go. We'll document this. So if this flag is set to true, the mock connection will respond to, will parse data sent through it, pretending that there is a web server on the other end, and respond by upgrading the connection to a WebSocket. There we go. We saved all of that to check that it was correct. I don't think I ever actually used a wait request. I'll keep it in there just in case I ever want to use it there. There's the pretending to be a server part. We added the whole client transport. We did a lot of renaming. Okay, I got a sense of that now. That was renaming. And that's a placeholder. Okay. Okay, cool. So WebGate, add client transport requirement, and make connection. Implement. Oh, that's a little bit too long. How about we shorten it? We say implement make connection, and we'll say add client transport requirement. Add a lot of stuff to the test framework to support make connection. add placeholder in realm server host, just so it will compile. It will crash horribly for now, because it's going to call as a null pointer. I'm going to check that in, and I'm going to take a bio break. I'll be back in like a minute. It's going to say 3 minutes, but probably only 1 minute. I'll be right back. Ooh, I got some bad reflections on my camera. Hold on a sec. Turn off my camera. Okay, hold on. Better? But I need to adjust the color key again. Color key. A little darker now, isn't it? The shade is slightly different too. Better? Maybe a little bluish tint to one side of me. I need better lighting to solve this permanently. Maybe a better office would be nice too. Okay, anyway. Right, so our objective now is to get it actually running for real by providing a client transport factory here. So we need that thing. Hold on a sec. That was indeed my dog barking there. Sorry about that. All right, so server transport factory is good, but what do we need for client transport factory? I don't think we need anything captured, and there's no arguments. I don't need any of this stuff, right? What do we need? Probably the stuff we have in the base transport factory. Yeah, here we go. Really just create a HTTP client network transport and subscribe our message. Okay, we want that, I guess. Is that captured up here? Yeah. Diagnostic messages, connect those to it. Okay, that's not defined because we didn't pull it in. Let's do that now. That doesn't autocomplete for me, and I'm wondering if it's because I don't have the header include paths set to include all directories. I had to do that in one other place for that to happen. Let me make a note of that. So, figure out in VS Code how to make pend include autocomplete work. I know it has something to do with include paths. Or no, I don't know. I'm suspect. All right. Look at that. My was on this side. a little transparent there. All right. Is that all I need? If that's all I need, then I'll be amazed. Maybe. Ooh, this might work. Might be totally cool. Let's see what happens. It's gonna spam it. Okay, I'm gonna turn down the interval that it tries to connect, because otherwise it's gonna really spam us. It's this worker polling interval. We'll make it. Even that might be too much. What if we do every second? Once a second. All right, and then if I go to the stage, so to speak, and stage everything. Now if I run realm server host, we need to tell it the realm, because we might have multiple realms. That's the realm, and then the instance is 0. See there, we can see it's trying to connect. We can actually see that of the error when it tries to connect that it fails. It's interesting, we only saw that once. I wonder if that's a bad sign. What happens if I hit Control C? Do we still have a crash issue? Yeah, we do. I also have a crash. Oh, I think I had a theory about that. That was happening yesterday. I think it's because we're not demobilizing when we should be. But anyway, let's set up the other end. We can let this side run, right? And then let's set up the other end. And I'll do, this is sort of obscure. Close or kill, and then you do unfasten, and then it gets its own window. Oh, you guys can't even see that because I'm blocking it. There we go. And you won't be able to, let's narrow this guy. Let's get like an equal share on both sides. How about that? That's good enough. There, that's better. Okay. So what directory I'm in here? It's orchestrator, and it's realm server host. It's realm, this realm. It's instance 1. Let's see if it works. Oh, they're trying. The connections are getting broken. Let me close these and then kind of look at the messages more closely. Bad request. Huh. So it got a munged request somehow. Closing connection. I wonder if that's because something to do with... I didn't expect this to happen, where I see that only once. I'm wondering if it's not resetting something completely back, and now this is junk. This includes junk from a previous connection or something like that. What does this end have to say? Oh, this got munged because two things are trying to print at the same time. Got a 400 bad request. So it connected, it sent a request, and the other guy said, that's a bad request. So this end is really the issue. Why is there a 9 and a 7 there? I think it's two different things trying to print out. There's a dot. So it's, I think there's another one. So there's a bracket 1 dot. Where's the dot again? 1 dot 16297. So that's a timestamp. Yeah, these two messages got mixed together. I should try to find out why, because they should all be routed to the same diagnostic log printer, unless I did a printf directly. Yeah, they should have gotten routed to the same printer that would have serialized them. Yeah, I guess the answer is I don't actually know why they're printing on top of each other. Shouldn't have printed on top of each other. So there are at least two problems. There's that, but the more serious one is, why is it saying it's a bad request? Oh, the front got chopped off. There's supposed to be like a get. Oh, I know. No, nothing ever said the method should be get. And also the path is missing. Okay, yeah. Okay, these are easy things to fix. We just need to improve on our testing. So it's basically, okay, let me show you a typical web request, right? Let's see, HTTP request example. Do we have an image? Images are nicer. Here we go. So there we go. That's a typical image, right? Or request, right? Well, nothing in my code right now is setting the get, and nothing also is setting the resource identifier path. So right now it's just setting space HTTP 1.1. So we see that if I scroll to it again. So here it says the bad requests, and here it is. Space HTTP 1.1, new line, and then the rest of it's good, right? So the rest of it's this first line. Nothing ever, and what did I do there? Nothing ever set get, and nothing ever set the path, so it's just space. So I can fix that. We need to test for it though. Oh, it's classified as a bug, and I fixed the bug first. Hey there, Hideo. It's going well. I'm getting all sorts of interesting bugs, but I'm making progress. I have my servers actually engaging with each other. They're just not agreeing. And no, I'm on 1.1. You can actually see that in my error message here. 1.1. I have it on my list to go to 2, and isn't 3 not done yet? I thought they were still trying to standardize that. So yeah, the servers right now are talking to each other, but not understanding what each other is saying. Now the test, where would that would be in the WebGate, right? So the WebGate, right now we're checking some things, we're not checking all the things. We're checking scheme port, but we're not checking path. So expect equal vector of strings, I think is the type. The path comes out, because the path is separated into pieces. And the pieces right now would be no pieces. Client connect. Actually, that comes in as part of the request, doesn't it? Yes. So request dot target dot get path. Right. So we expect an empty path. Empty path? No, it's got to have one element in it. Representing slash. For you guys, it would be slash. I think that's what we expect, but we'll see. Thing is, we weren't expecting anything, and we also expect the what is it? Method? The method to be get. Is it all in caps? I think it is. So those are the two things that I think are not passing right now. And to test this right, I do what? Dot realm server test realm server, right? Ooh, I got a weird crash. Thanks for the follow. 2H strike. Is that like two-handed strike? That's interesting. Oh, that might be. That's right. I artificially increased the timeout just so I wouldn't get spammed. Right. We need to put that back to where it was. There we go. Okay, so yeah, the method isn't get. The path doesn't have. There's a placeholder empty string to indicate the slash in the path, right? Otherwise, it's going to be empty string. It's just not a valid first line of an HTTP request. So let's fix it. So if you're just watching and you're confused about how I'm programming, if you know TDD, it makes a little bit more sense. When I run into a problem, the first thing I try to do is isolate the problem in my tests, which is I added these 2 lines. They were expectations that were not checking. Now we're checking for them, and the test is failing, which is the reproduction of the bug. And then I go fix it. So if you weren't using TDD, the way you probably fix it is the moment you saw that the get was missing, you would just jump straight to the code in here where we set up the request, and you would just say, oh yeah, I forgot to say it's a get. Method is get, right? So Hideo's asking, what's the last extension icon? The triangle. Oh, that's CMake tests. So the 2 main ones I use are C, C++, but then CMake tools. So that just has CMake's view of my projects. So what my targets are, and then, you know, so CMake understands that it's going to build a lib here, and it's going to build an exe here, right? And then it's got convenient buttons to configure and build. I tend to not use that so much because F7 both runs this configure and this build. If configure is needed, it'll run it for me, and F7 is this build. So I hardly ever look at that tab anymore. Okay, it was get, and then we needed to set a path. That's target. So it's just going to be an empty string path. There we go. Yeah, shout out to Kenkomatics for helping spur me into making lots of commands. If he streamed, I would do the shout out command. Actually, I should just do that. So I don't know if he streams, but I want to shout out to him because he helped me spur me into making commands. All right. Let's see if that passes the test now. If it passes the test, then we'll go back and... Okay, it does. So we'll go back and try to actually run the damn thing again. All right. I need to stage it and then run it like that. Interesting. Oh, I didn't reduce the interval again. That's why. So let me do that. That's the interval I actually want. I wanted to try to reconnect that frequently, but it's obnoxious when I'm printing messages to the console, so I'm slowing it down a bit. I'm testing it this way. So now it's, you know, trying every second. So let's try the other instance. So there's the moment of truth. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Connection established. Connected to instance 0. Instance 1 connected to us. That is awesome. So theoretically, this should work for any number of instances I've configured. So if I really wanted to have fun right now, I would just add a 3rd instance. And I should see them all just connecting to each other. Do I want to do that, or is that going to make my windows really... No, we could do it. Why not? I need to fix this crash on stop problem. So look at that. And it does the right thing. We should actually test that now. It does the right thing, although there's a bug there. See that? Mutex destroyed while busy. It does the right thing in that it knows it lost that connection and it resumes trying to connect. So actually this is going to cause it to stop too. If it weren't for this mutex destroyed while busy, then it would have been able to reconnect. So we got some bugs on disconnection, but let me set up 2 more instances just because I'm having fun. I'll make that window half high. And make a couple more. Close or kill, unfasten, and then put it up here. Whoa. Not all the way up. Not all the way up there. I'm having trouble grabbing the bottom. Okay, we'll just grab it by the top. All right. If only I had like 4 monitors and then I could stream them all. Let's go from 2 to 3. All right. Yes, so build orchestrator, and I'll set up the command line. Instance 2. And now for this to work at all, I need to actually change the configuration file. Let's change it. Yeah, let's change it here, but I'll have to rerun the stage command. So we just simply add another one of these. So now I give it unique port numbers. Now we have 3 instances. The idea in the long run is I want to be able to, like, every time I do that and I hit a button, it should distribute them to the cluster, and the cluster should reconfigure automatically. That's going to be my deployment goal. Is it's all controlled through this configuration file, and then some kind of tool that will either send a configuration file only, or if I need to add code, I could have it send a deployed new version of the server, and then it'll unpack it and then upgrade servers. All right, I need to stage it. Stage. Okay, but now when we run it, it's going to try to connect to instance 1 and 2. You'll see it alternating there. It's trying to talk to both of them. So instance 1, now 0 and 1 are talking, but they're both trying to talk to 2. Now 2 connects to 0 and 1. Oh, this is so cool. So now all 3 are connected to each other. They're not saying anything to each other. We could put in code now to ping to make sure that the connections are still working, but you already know where all this info will run. I'm trying to keep it generic, but I have the most experience now with AWS, so I was planning to run it there. I think I'll probably just, what's the right word? Kind of cheat and run 3 instances on the same EC2 instance. I think in the real thing though, what I want is a different EC2 instance for each server instance. So it doesn't have to be AWS though. I'm making this buildable on Windows or Linux or even the Mac, and so any kind of cloud infra it should run on. Okay, how am I doing on time? It's almost approaching 3 hours. I need to keep my voice happy. But I'm really happy. I got the instances talking to each other. I should probably make sure the teardown is clean though. Let's check in and then we'll work on the try to recreate this bug. So it's some kind of abort. I think it has to do with one of these guys was talking about oh, thanks for following. Napakrua. Hope I'm saying that right. I think this has something to do with there was another message about destroying a mutex while it was busy, so I'm probably breaking some rule in one of my threads. So we'll have to hopefully I'll find it quickly. And see, there it is. It's mutex destroyed while busy. And yeah, all of them are crashing now. They all crashed. That's fine. We'll let them crash for now. When this runs by itself, I think it crashes. So all I really need to do, yeah, is run this in the debugger and witness the crash. I'm trying to remember how, because I'm going to need to pass Control-C into like that. I'm trying to remember how to do that with VS Code. There was a, oh, it was a debugger command, wasn't it? Okay, well, let me set it up. So, oh, hold on. I was going to check in my code. Check in first. I don't want to check that in though. Right, this was a bug, and this demonstrates the bug. So those two go together. And this was separate check-in. This is integration. And that was playing around with the third instance. So this WebGate fix bug in HTTP request when contacting servers, other servers. Set the method and path, which are both required, and end up in the first line of the HTTP request. Okay, this I will check in, as the integration step. Realm server host integrate WebGate with a HTTP client transport. So notice that this check-in has no accompanying test. That's because right now all my tests are unit tests, and this is an integration component that's pulling in different components and just running them. So I don't have integration tests. If I was super cool, I would also have integration tests that are automated, and I would do this kind of thing and then have some kind of elaborate framework that would check to make sure the right thing happened. Right now I'm a poverty integrator, so to speak, and so my testing of integration is just run the thing and see if it works. And I'm really counting heavily on my unit tests being good enough so that I don't have to do much integration testing. Do you know what would cause the mutex destruction? My idea would be that a thread was terminated too early while it was holding it. Oh, thank you, Rally Monkey. So, we'll find out. The debugger should trap it exactly at the moment it happens, which is why we use debuggers. This is just playing around. I'm not going to check that in. This is, actually, we need to undo that. So Control J, enter. Because we're going to go back to testing in the unit testers. We'll keep that for now, right? No, no, we can keep that for now. That's only used in when we run it for real. All right. I'm in the wrong window. What happened to my... Here it is. Okay. Phew. I have a launch configuration. I guess it doesn't really matter which instance we run. Well, let's make one for 0. The only difference is that it is a different argument there. Now we can select it and tell it to run. Oh, and remove all my breakpoints that I don't care about anymore. And then go again. So it's running over here and it's trying to connect. I'm kind of worried about it's only printing that once. I don't know why. I want to know why. When something happens and I don't understand it, I get nervous. Okay, so I should be able to hit Control C here. Interesting. It didn't get caught. If I hit retry. Okay, there it gets caught. So we caught it. The abort. What happened? Oh, I think it is, yeah. We're destroying the coordinator while it's running. That's not it. Yeah, see, it says the thread is still running. We're trying to destroy a thread that's still running. So I think I might have mentioned it before that I forgot to call demobilize on stuff. And that's bad. I should have remembered that. So I call mobilize, right? I never call demobilize. That we can just put it for now here. And let me run it again. Here's the window. Hit Control C. It's still bad. Retry what's going on now. Okay, it's deep in some worker thread. No, it's in a main thread. But it's... Oh. You know, whenever you see that, it means you're not running the thing you just built. You're running something old. It doesn't match... The source code doesn't match the thing you built. Problem is, the way I have this launch configuration set up, it's running it from this orchestrator directory, and that's the stage, not where it's first built. So it's built in one directory, then it's staged along with other things, namely the orchestrator. And I have a command that moves things, which is that one you might have seen me run, wstage, W for Windows. If you're wondering why I use Windows, that's why. So am I using any game engine? If not, may I ask the reason for it? I am not using a game engine because mostly right now I'm doing server-side stuff. And I really, honest answer would be I don't know of any server-side game engines. The only game engines I know about are like Unity, Unreal, and those are all client-side game engines. Now, when I do my client, I'll probably not use a game engine simply because on the client end, it won't really need a game engine. I want most of the logic to be server side. But another reason is, it's kind of a theme of my stream, is I like to do stuff from scratch. So Handmade Hero, for example, is another stream that you can watch where I don't remember his name, but the host of Handmade Hero, the guy, he is making everything from scratch, and it's just something I enjoy doing. I will certainly look at game engines. I've played with Unity before, and if you were to say, hey, what you're doing would be a lot easier in so-and-so game engine, then I'll be glad to check it out. I do enjoy doing stuff from scratch, though, so I might say that's a cool game engine, but hey, I'm still going to try to do it myself. I'll probably regret it later and then use the game engine you suggested, but you know, we only really learn from our failures. So, and I have fun doing it. So that's the long-winded answer. Right, so I staged it now. I should be able to run it. And I hit Control C. Oh, actually, it exited cleanly. So I think we fixed that crash. Now we're on to the mutex crash, I think. So if I run this, and then Control C, we still have that. Okay, there's that. I forgot about that. We have that second issue where we have log messages stepping over each other. There's still that problem. I think this is saying the combination of server exiting and something else. I do it at that point. Yeah, so there's exiting. So it's exiting, and then while it's what happens after exiting? The demobilize. Let's move the demobilize. Actually, let's just say shutting down, and then exiting. And then after this time, I'll remember to stage and then run. So there we see shutting down, and then later we see exiting, and that ought to be the last thing that we see, even if it's spamming us with reconnection messages. Yeah, exiting. That's what I want to see at the end. Okay, so we're good with the crash problems. We have two problems left, which is the mutex destroyed, and then the log stepping on itself. You believe the source engine has really good networking code available out of the box. Let me grab your suggestion to look at later. So I like to do this where people give me suggestions. I like to write it down, and what I'll do later is, sometime between now and the next stream, I'll try to look at each of these and then write something here. So thank you for the suggestion. Millennial programmers use JavaScript and Electrons these days, and people are forgetting how to handcraft things. But that can be a good thing, though. If you're not interested in how the components you're reusing actually work, that's still okay, because you're standing on someone else's shoulders to do something higher, right? It's actually validates the work of the people who made those frameworks for you. You're saying, I trust this framework enough that I don't even need to know how it works. I'm just going to use it. That's maybe the good thing to say about it. Now, forgetting about handcraft things, well, that's true on the flip side, but I think we won't ever run out of people who are interested in how things work at the lowest levels. The people who are making their own game engines, they're handcrafting their game engine, and we have enough of those to keep going, right? So in a sense, I think it's okay, because as a community, we do need people that are paying more attention to what can we build with what we have versus making new tools. So to test the mutex thing, let's run one of them in the debugger and then one out. I think what happened was the mutex problem happened when it happened in instance 0 when instance 1 disconnected. So let's run instance 0 here. So here we see it running. And then in this window, I will run, let's put it over here. In this instance, I'll run instance 1. and then they're both trying to talk to 2. I should probably remove instance 2 so we don't see that spammed. But if I hit Control C there, that's interesting. Maybe it was there and we just missed it, but I would have expected it to hit a breakpoint saying a thread. Oh no, it was there. It's there. Retry. Here it is. Here's the mutex being destroyed when it shouldn't have been. Debuggers are kind of cool. They get more cool when you get comfortable using them. You kind of just have to know, like, each of these levels in the call stack may or may not be useful. Like, these ones are not very useful unless you get really confused about where you are. The useful ones are usually the top says, okay, yeah, mutex had an issue, right? And it blew up. Now, why it blew up, we kind of have to see what context we're in. So we're destroying a network connection. Yeah, so it's the mutex owned by the implementation of a network connection. So something is destroying it while it's being held. So what's holding it? Load more, please. Wow, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Okay, so ultimately, what's happening here? This is a worker, no, we're not at the bottom. Let's go all the way to the bottom. Wow, a lot of stack frames. What is this context? Okay, this is the processing thread of one network connection. So, yeah, we don't know which thread, we don't know which connection it is. Okay, but at some point, it detected that the connection was broken. So it called back a close. Hold on, I don't quite understand this. Oh, right, it's calling close. Close calls close immediately. Close immediately calls the broken delegate, which is another callback. So it's calling up and up the stack here. So this delegate is the layer between the connection and this web server. So it's a web server side connection got broken. It's going to tell the web server, yeah, hey, we lost, or actually, this is an upgraded connection. So the thing it's telling about the disconnection is the WebSocket. So WebSocket says, oh, foo, we got a connection broken. So what happens is we close our end of it. What is our close? Is we do its code 1006, which is, I think, unexpected. Yeah, broken by peer. Hey there, Kenkomatics. Welcome back. So yeah, I'm just debugging the, I don't know if you saw it earlier, but if you were here, but there's a thread being, no, a mutex being destroyed while locked. Okay, so at this point, what is it doing? It's calling this close delegate. It's sort of misleading sometimes. This is showing me the line it will get to next. But if you look in the call stack, it's actually inside of this closed delegate, so it's this thing it's calling. So it's saying, yeah, hey, 1006, which is a connection broken by peer, right? And that says, okay, we're at the coordinator layer. So the coordinator says, okay, a WebSocket got closed. What do? We go into this. Oh, and it gets to the end and it's releasing the WebSocket. Makes sense. Because this is now the last reference, the last strong reference to the WebSocket. The WebSocket says, oh, oof, we're being destroyed, so its destructor gets called here. So this is the last strong reference to the connection. Oh, I think I see the problem. Okay, I'm worried about the fact that I needed this code here at all in a destructor and that I can't default this destructor is a code smell. Code smell is that connection object can't be, what's the word? It can't be released from its own worker thread. But that's exactly the thread that we're in right now. So that means that when we get a connection in, or when we get a callback that we've been closed, We can't do that in that same thread. We need to post it to be done later. At least, yeah. Yeah, we need to post it to be done later. At some level. Because yeah, it gets all the way to the point where it says, hey, you're trying to destroy the mutex, and the mutex is being locked way down here. Right there. It's that mutex probably. Yeah, 8792 has it locked. And what's our thread ID? It doesn't say here. In Visual Studio, it would give us what our thread ID is. And then you can, that's kind of one of the things that's cool about these mutexes is that they tell you which the ID of the thread that has it currently locked. But it's probably this one. So not only is the mutex held, but it's going to run into problems later where it tries to destroy the connection from its own worker thread. So, yep, we can't just release WebSockets from the callback. Let me think about the right way to fix this. Need to make this asynchronous. I'm wondering if we can just be kind of sloppy and just make an asynchronous task which releases the last strong reference. Kind of new to this, but let's see what happens if I do this. So if I say, I need to look in the manual what header we get async from. Wow, my glasses look spooky with my blue screen like that. Okay, it's gonna be hard for you guys to read. I don't know how to zoom this in, but I'm just looking something up. It's in future. Okay, that's really all I needed. Okay, we're already including future. Cool. So, standard async. Oh no, I was reading the other day you can't do this with async. And no, it's use async with the future. So we're okay as long as we do this. So async, or am I right? It runs it asynchronously if you launch it with deferred. Oh no, it returns a future. Yeah, we want to avoid using a future with async because it becomes synchronous if we actually wait on it, or if we even if we destroy it. So let's just do a thread and detach it. That's just a throwaway thread. So we'll make a throwaway thread that captures the WebSocket and does nothing with it. That should be good enough, right? So what that does is it'll create a thread. No, first things first. It will create a function object which captures the WebSocket, so that increases the reference count. Then it'll give that function object to thread, which spins off another thread, gives it that object and says run this. The thread will run that function, and when that function returns, the function gets destroyed. The WebSocket reference count is decremented, and then if that was the last one, then it gets destroyed, and it's being destroyed in a thread other than the network connections thread, so that we won't have this problem. So that's a totally cheesy, gross way of doing it, but let me see if that actually fixes it. I need to remember stage first. Oh, while I'm at it, let me remove that third instance. Okay, stage, and run. Okay, there's instance 0. It's going to try to talk to instance 1. That's fine. Put you up here. Okay, now let's run instance 1. Instance 1 is connected. Now I'm going to disconnect instance 1. Okay, still got a crash. Where is it crashing now? Load more, please. It's still destroying. What thread are we in, though? Okay, it's yeah that same thread, but did it not launch the thread here? Oh, it launched it and immediately it ran and finished. It finished too quickly. Okay, so I gotta cheat a little bit more. Standard, this thread, sleep for chrono. We don't have to sleep long, but how about 50 milliseconds? We have to make sure that that happens last. Well, no, do we? Yeah, we do. It's an execution order. We need to make sure it decrements the WebSocket last. If I could make... No, that still wouldn't work, would it? No, if I could make a thread... No, I can do this without a delay. I can make the function const auto... what are we going to call it? WS holder. And then we just give it as the thread. We still have a reference to the function ourselves that we don't release until we're done. No, this still won't work. The problem is this might run and execute and finish first. So I think I do need to cheat for now. All right, we're going to cheat for now. Let's try and see if that cheat worked. Connect instance 1. Great. Now disconnect. Hey, it worked. Okay, so it's working with our cheat. So the cheat is that we don't let this WebSocket get destroyed in the context of the thread that we're running in. We always make it an independent thread that has the last WebSocket reference. That way we don't violate the rule that I've been trying to remove, this rule, but I have a rule that the network connection cannot be destroyed in the context of its worker thread. Or I should say not destroyed, but the last reference to the network connection can't be released in the context of its own worker thread. If I solve that problem, I won't need any of this stuff. So maybe what I'll do, Control-C that guy now, I'm going to set a note here saying this ugly hack this ugly hack is necessary because the WebSocket may be using a connection which is implemented by system abstractions network connection. Which currently has the limitation that it cannot be its destructor can't be called in the context of the worker thread it spins off to do background processing. Revisit this and hopefully, hey Hideo, yeah, this is totally a hack. Revisit this and hopefully remove it when this object is fixed. All right, we're going to keep that hack for now. That hack also is technically in this destructor. all of this stuff is technically only needed because of the same thing. Actually, no, it's a slightly different. But it's related. There's a I don't want to get into it because frankly I'm embarrassed by it. But a side effect also is that we have to clear some callbacks and break the connection, because if we didn't, then its destructor would do it in the wrong thread context, and yeah, all of this is just an ugliness, that a code smell, in other words. Code smell is a term that people use when there's just something that doesn't look right in the code, and it's not a bug per se, but the code needs to be there because of a design flaw or a bug elsewhere. So it's a smell. It's like it's not what smells, but it's the sense that there's something wrong somewhere. And it points back to this connection object, how it's implemented. And that is a big to-do thing. I hope to actually conquer that off stream, because I pull my hair out and I'm hit my head against the table a lot trying to fix that. And when I do, I'll go over it on stream what I did. That's what I'll do, because I don't know what to do yet. Ugly hack for now. All right. So I think we're in good shape, and I'm past the 3-hour mark. So maybe what I'll do is I'll save this for tomorrow or Monday. I don't know if I'm going to stream on the weekend, but good news is I did all this and it's all working. Yay! So we implemented making connections with our WebGate class. We have it configured with a client configuration transport. The servers are connecting to each other. So next thing that I'll do next time is try to implement Raft. So it's an algorithm for electing one server to be the leader, and that leader is then going to be responsible for making the final decision on changes to server state. So for us, since it's the game server, it's going to be the game state. So be doing that next time. Saw earlier pressing enter to properly wrap one part. Yeah, I'm using that, by the way, but I have an issue with it. I actually filed it as an issue. So let me demonstrate. I might type in something like this, like Funky Town. I do have it set so Control Q does it. Problem I have is that if I put Funky Town here, look what it does. It insists on collapsing the paragraph with this, which violates my arguably elitist requirement that it start as an indented paragraph below. So what I did is I went to the rewrap tools feature request page, and I asked them if I could have an option that allows me to wrap only the indented paragraph. Empty lines, you have the same issue? Yeah, so I haven't heard back about that feature request, and I know I don't expect them to look at it, but if, it'd be cool if they did. The other option is I give up my elitist attitude and allow it to do that. I'm on the fence. It's a question of how much discomfort it causes me. So Lua is in the frequently asked questions. What do I use Lua for? Nothing yet, but I will tell you when I will use it and where. So this is maybe a good part of the wrap-up, is if you missed it before, I'll go over it again, to give you an idea if this is something you might be interested in seeing later. So, hold on a sec. Sorry about that. That's my corny overlay when I have to mute. So, the Lua is going to sit here where it says method. So we'll get there eventually. Right now we're working our way from the top down in. So the idea is that anything in my game, whether it be a whole world or a particular zone or a place or an entity, an item, a door, a torch, a laser beam, etc., might have an attached method to it, and also might have, one or more attached effects. So these are multiples. An effect is like a trigger. So like, let's say, for example, a good example is every time a player will move from one place to another, it'll trigger the left the place trigger on the previous place and entered the place trigger on the new place. So let's say a laser beam had an enter the place trigger or effect that would, you call a method, burn intruder. So the way I would insert it is I would add an effect that said on place enter, and then it would say call burn intruder, and then I would have a Lua method called burn intruder, and that would do whatever I want. Apply the burning effect to the player, reduce their hit points, kill them if their hit points are low, whatever. The Lua methods will have access to all the other game objects. And we'll have access to this reconciler. This reconciler is a component that you need to go to in order to change the game. So we get requests in from clients, we get requests and commands from the leader, and we also get internal requests from Lua methods. And the reconciler collates them together, and if we are the leader, it applies it immediately to the journal. Otherwise, it sends a request up to the leader, who hopefully will tell us, yeah, do that thing, apply it to the journal. So yeah, to answer the question with a long-winded answer, we won't see Lua until I get to this part. So judging about how fast I'm going, probably not for a couple months. We'll say conservatively a couple months. But when we do, I'll have a method to inject Lua methods and attach them directly to game objects in the game state. So that brings me to another point. I mentioned this before. I want to get enough of the game server running so that even when there's no game objects, it's running. And I will be logging in just like anyone else, only I'll have a way to authenticate saying it's me. When I log in, I'll be able to actually insert methods, set effects. In other words, be changing the game content while logged in. And anyone I grant the same access to will be able to it. So if I might say to you, hey, you're good at Lua. Why don't you script up what happens when someone trips up a laser beam? You'd write the Lua, then you'd have some way of injecting that and attaching it as a method to a game object in the game. Yeah, Puppy likes it when people come home. So, yeah, again, a month or two will probably be doing that, but for now we're just trying to get things together. The good news is we have all of this running. We don't have them electing a leader yet, so this part of the diagram is missing, so we can't connect to it as a client, really. That's what we'll be doing next. After we get that running, we'll be ready to start putting in these pieces. I'll probably start with the journal, because that's required by the algorithm. The leader of the cluster gets to write to the journal. Every other server has a copy of it, but they have to wait for the leader to say what to apply as a change. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, let me go and check this code in, and then we'll find someone to host. Ooh, why it is? Oh, I'm doing that. Am I doing that? That's because this window's not wide enough. That's maybe a bug in my tool. If it's less than 80 characters wide, it doesn't know how to erase itself. Okay, we put in ugly hack. This was a different problem. So there are two problems. Let's fix one problem at a time. This problem is simple entity components. Oh, thank you very much. Let me grab that and look at it later. Paste as. So again, I try to follow up on all these suggestions here if you look back in a day or so. So thank you for that. So this is realm server host. A fix crash on shutdown. So the crash is demobilize needs to be called before program exits. Otherwise, doom. Okay, this was just a convenience thing. I wanted to see an extra message, so realm server host. Emit. Oh, that reminds me. There's another bug that we were talking about. I didn't fix, right? Look into bug with diagnostic log stepping on itself. That shouldn't happen. If I did it right, it shouldn't happen because there's a mutex that gets locked to synchronize those. Emit diagnostic message when server begins shutdown. And it just barely squeaked by the the width there. All right, so this is fixing the other problem. So server add ugly hack to work around mutex thread issue. So network connection isn't good enough, isn't written well enough to allow us to release the last reference from any arbitrary thread context. Bad things happen if you do it from the network connection's own worker thread. Work around this for now by ensuring, as best we can, as best as we reasonably can, that the last reference is held by a thread that isn't the network connection's own worker thread. It's really dirty because let's say that thread is still running and we're shutting down the main thread of the process. It could actually cause a crash there because we'd be using objects that, I mean, I don't actually really understand completely what happens when a program's main thread exits, but I think bad things happen. Am I making server framework, or is it just server part of what's going to be a bigger game? It's the server part of what's going to be a bigger game. So if you want to learn more about what I intend to do, I have a link there. But just really briefly, I am hoping to make my own online multiplayer sandbox game in the spirit of a game that I played when I was a kid that I really liked, which is Ultima series. So Ultima 3, 4, 5. And then maybe grow the game depending on the feedback I get. So right now I'm doing the server side, but I intend to hopefully soon, hopefully not before long, get a rudimentary client setup that lets people play the game. There's not going to be much game there, but you'll be able to connect and see as I start building things in the game world, things in the client that you can do with the game world. It's going to take a while. So hopefully if you come back in like a month or two, you'll be able to interact with the game as I'm streaming. It might not be a fun game, but we'll try to, as a community, I hope, make it fun. You'll tell me what sucks about it, and I'll try to work really hard on it. And eventually, I would say 2-3 years from now, it should be something that would achieve my initial set of goals. Love 2D? Yeah, actually, there's one streamer I follow that does this all the time. So shout out to Leland. He streams development of his game, and he uses Love 2D. The difference is I want mine to run in the browser, so I have been looking into running Lua in the browser, but I also kind of want to learn JavaScript. So I'm looking at JavaScript with either Pixie.js or Phaser. And Leland's someone who is doing Love 2D, so since you mentioned it, if you didn't know him, if you do know him, okay. So if you didn't, you'd be into his stream because he does exactly that. Yeah, so I'm already tracking the Love 2D thing and following Leland, so we're good there. I'm done checking in, right? Okay, I haven't pushed it upstream, but that's okay. I'm the only developer right now. Actually, let's just do it. It'll be the final push. Oh, and I found out why I'm getting this. This is, I think, just being sent to everyone pushing to GitHub Cloud. And they're just telling everyone to double check their clients. I checked mine and it is using TLS2, so we're good. So it's not that it's telling me I'm doing something that's going to not work soon. It's just a warning. So, anything else? Just thinking through my head. I guess that's it. So if this sounds interesting to you, probably either tomorrow if I decide to stream on the weekend or Monday, I'll be dipping into the Raft coherence algorithm. And basically the goal will be to, right now my servers talk to each other just to connect. But this raft will allow them to talk to each other and elect one of themselves to be a leader. And if that leader were to go down, the remaining servers will hold a re-election and find a new leader. And then the leader is going to bind the well-known port right here. That will allow us clients to reliably connect to some server that's running with only brief windows of time when a leader is being elected where the clients won't be able to get in. But yeah, clients will be able to get in normally. And at some point, I'll be able to put this on AWS rather than running it locally. And then have a rudimentary client, and then we'll be able to play it. But one step at a time. I'm peeking off screen right now to see. I don't even have the window up. Here we go. I'm gonna go peek to see who's still going. Everyone I know I've already hosted or rated recently, so I think we're just gonna go back to Adam's channel. If you don't know Adam13531, you need to know him because his stream is awesome. He's working on a game called Botland, and right now it's sort of in the same spirit of what I'm doing. He's working on the server and the DevOps, so to speak. So here's his channel. We're gonna go host him and say hi. And see you next time, either tomorrow or Monday. Don't know yet. But until then, folks, thanks for watching. And oh, I should link this before I go. If you have questions for me, or you just want to get like an announcement of when I'm about to stream, check out my Discord channel. Everyone's got one, so I have one too. So anyway, thanks guys. I'll see you next time.